Welcome to the May 14th, 2025 meeting of the Wilmington School Committee. We are just returning from an executive session. First item on the agenda, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Moving right along, we're going to go to the student representative report with special guest Jackson Kiley this evening. Welcome, Jackson. Thank you for being here.
It's nice to be here. I'm Jackson Kiley. I'm a junior at Wilmington High School, and I'm also a member of the Student Advisory Committee, and I'll be delivering the student report today. So on Friday, May 3rd, Wilmington High School hosted the Special Olympics, which was a huge success. We want to extend congratulations to the amazing athletes who participated in the events, and a big thank you to the volunteers and organizers who were able to make that day possible. And another congratulations to WHS senior Catherine Howe, who recently was named a semifinalist in the 2025 U.S. Presidential Scholars Program. They were only one of 621 students nationwide who were selected. We also want to congratulate freshman Matthew thank you. Lawler, who received a Silver Key Award in the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards, sponsored by SMFA Tufts. And over April vacation, WHH students participated in 2 educational travel experiences. One group went to the Galapagos Islands, and the other participated in an exchange program in France. Both groups enjoyed meaningful hands-on learning experiences abroad, and we also want to thank the WHS staff members who organized and chaperoned the students on the trips. The 13th annual WPS Student Art Show took place on May 9th and 10th at the Wilmington Middle School, and the show featured a wide variety of student artwork and showcased creativity and talent of Wilmington student artists. May 6th and 8th was the WHS Band and Orchestra concerts, and they gave very successful performances. And we want to extend congratulations to all the musicians and the directors who, for their hard work and their talent in performing. On Wednesday, May 1st, the DECA students traveled to Bodeborg in Malden for a team building field trip. They used collaboration skills to solve a series of physical and mental challenges and puzzles. The AP Environmental Science class recently visited ReWorld, which is a waste management facility, and they learned about waste disposal and how energy can be generated through recycling. After that, they went to the Right Lock Farm, where they explored sustainable agriculture and composting practices, and they also observed researchers relocating bees to new hives in an effort to support declining bee populations. On May 5th, the World Cultures Club held a meeting focused on the Philippines, and the students there learned about Filipino culture and sampled some traditional snacks from the Philippine Islands. In athletics, we want to extend congratulations to Leah Murphy, who reached a major milestone earlier this month. She scored her 100th career point in lacrosse this season, so big congratulations to her. On Monday, May 12th, Jason Beer, a 1989 WH graduate and 1994 MLB All-Star, visited the WHS baseball team to share insights from his 10-year professional baseball career. And the WHS baseball team also recently attended the Beanpot Baseball Championship at Fenway Park. And that's it for me. So,
thank you, Jackson. Questions or comments? Mr. Golden.
I just want to thank you for your service on the cell phone working group.
So, unrelated. Mr. Rexon, hold on. Not quite yet. Mr. Rexon.
I just want to add an extra shout out to the art show this past weekend. So I think for anyone who was able to attend it, that you know that it's just an astonishing display of artistic talent throughout this district, and I feel like that it would just be a crime to keep it all hidden, and that we put it on display. I mean, I wish we could display it longer so more people could see it, but unfortunately we can't take over the cafeteria in the middle school for a week. But it's fantastic, and it's the not just the amount of talent, but the amount of effort that goes into the way it's put on, the way it's set up, the way that it's displayed, that there is so much respect shown to the students as artists. This is not just like, oh, you did a pretty picture, let's just throw some Scotch tape over and put it up on a board. I mean, they're beautifully framed, they're beautifully presented with, with a label as far as the medium that they're working in and the titles. It's just really well done, and again, really respectful of them as artists. And every year, it's, I think, just one of the highlights.
Yeah. I was able to go to the art show for one of the days, and I was very like blown away by the level of work from like all grades, like from like the elementary schools all the way up to the high school. And like I also like seeing like the progression like from like work that's done like at a lower level to the high school level. Like the difference in the level of work was very nice to see like the progression.
And one thing I just want to quickly also call out that was amazing is that there was one display of ceramics in which first graders in the district had drawn and illustrated and so forth pictures of monsters, and then high school ceramic students had brought them to life as ceramic creations. So they were displayed together with the original first grade, drawing, sketch, painting, and so forth, and then the three-dimensional ceramic version of it created by the ceramic students, and that was also just fantastic and fun and just a wonderful cross-school collaboration.
That was exactly my point. The monster collaboration between the elementary, lower grades, and the high school was fantastic. But thank you also for the part of what's amazing about that summary you just gave was just the breadth of academic and athletic and arts and performing arts and all the different areas. It's awesome to hear. So thank you very much for sharing.
All right, now you can go.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Appreciate you being here, Jackson. All right. That brings us to our school choice hearing, public hearing. So, excuse me for just a minute. I have it right here. So we do need a motion and a vote to enter into the public hearing for the school choice. Mr. Golden?
So moved.
Thank you. Second by Mr. Ragsdale. All those in favor? Unanimous. Okay, that brings us to the public hearing for school choice. Dr. Brandt.
Thank you. In your packet, again, is we've included the information that was presented to you a few meetings back on this topic. As again, for those, not just the committee, but those in the community tuning in, this is a requirement under Massachusetts general law for school districts to entertain the idea of participating in the school choice program. And it, because of that, requires school committees throughout the Commonwealth to make a decision on this matter. As you know, right now, the district here in Wilmington, we are not a school choice district. We talked at length about this in previous years, and this year spent a little bit more time digging a little bit deeper in terms of a sort of analysis of our current and projected enrollment. I won't go through all of that we talked through the last time. It's an extensive packet, but really was intended to not overwhelm or drown people in data, but really take a critical look at what our current available seats might be, and if anywhere. You recall that based upon that review of the analysis, the only grade level span or band that I believe the committee might consider opening up school choice is at the middle school level. That's based upon not only consideration of contracts, but available physical space and a whole host of other things. And so that being said, though, we also have talked about some limitations and concerns at the high school level with the new schedule that now is in place that Mr. Gender and his team have brought into the mix here, which we've also talked about. So because of that, the concerns that if school choice was opened at the middle school, that could, down the road, as those students matriculate from the middle school to high school, because keeping in mind, once we open up school choice, we have to allow those students to graduate, should they wish. The concern right now is that could exacerbate some of the points of tension around current class sizes. Based upon all of that, you'll recall I made the recommendation, therefore, to the committee that the school committee choose not to participate in the school choice program for the 2025-26 school year. That recommendation continues before you this evening. And as noted again in the memo, well, this would be the recommendation right now for next year, I do think that we should, as a school district and a community, continue to monitor and carefully look at this for the future. There's lots that could change in the future at the elementary level with the building project and other variables. So I think it's important to keep our eye on that. Happy to take any questions if members of the committee have any.
Thank you, Dr. Brady. Questions? Mr. Turner?
So 3 things. One, just to remind everyone, this is all about whether or not children have the ability to come into our district from other districts. Certainly children within our district, if their parents want to look into school choice for out of the district, that's up to them. I do think it's important, and you touched on this, but we are at a period of, we've returned to a little bit of enrollment growth across the district, so that's certainly an impactful thing. And then the one other piece that I really struggle with is the state financing the state's guidance on financing it has not changed for at least 6 years, probably longer. And the fact that that isn't indexed in any way is really concerning. If we were to enter into school choice, I would want to know that that would grow with inflation, with time, and that it would also be reset. And so that was one of the comments for the legislative working group, was that the fact that that number has been fixed for, and it's at least 6 years, but it's probably longer than that, it doesn't make any sense. And so, partly because it's district to district transfer, so why would it not move in some way? And there may be some good reasons, but prior for us to take the step, in addition to all the concerns you've raised, I think that moving on that is something that gives me a lot of heartburn without any change to where it is now.
Thank you.
I'll just briefly chime in. To be honest, I haven't checked in on the latest with regard to the state's discussion of this topic, but there is a strong allergy to indexing much of anything to anything on Beacon Hill. I imagine that this has just not been high on the radar for the legislature.
Fair.
Dr. McCauley?
Just to follow on Mr. Turner's comments, agreed on the reimbursement costs. And then I think also what we talked about, I think it was like a couple months ago when we brought this up, was around we just don't need students to help keep the lights on. And there's a lot of other schools in the district that need that. They need students in just to keep the lights on, just to keep the school running. We're fortunate enough to not be in that position. So I would say I think with all these together may not be the best choice for Wilmington at this time.
It's sort of following up on that so that I'm clear, folks watching at home. If we were to participate in school choice, hypothetically, a student comes into the district, we are required to educate that student all the way through graduation.
Correct.
But that student can choose to go back to their home district if they want, right? We can't sort of push them out, but they can choose to
Right.
leave. Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Other thoughts, questions, comments? Mr. Axel?
Just that I want to extend my appreciation to the additional work that was done this year.
Yes.
We had talked over many years that, we would really like to have like a deeper dive into our capacities and abilities, and I think, we got that this year, and based on that, I am more comfortable this year than I have been in past years, really saying that just like I think that it's clear that the best choice for Wilmington is to continue as we have and not participate in school choice going forward, at least for the immediate next couple of foreseeable years.
Dr. Bryson?
It's so interesting being over here. I was going to say the exact same thing, so I won't repeat it, but I would like to extend some thanks to the working group. So Dr. Brandon put together a set of administrators, and I got to sit in on one of those meetings, and it was really helpful to hear them think through these pieces. And I think adding the enrollment and looking at those classes, like David said, has been really great for us to sort of have a better understanding as to why this wouldn't be recommended. So thank you for doing this, and I hope we can kind of continue this moving forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Okay, so as it's a public hearing, it does have a public comment period. Public comment on school choice? Hearing none. We would do two things. We would need a motion and then a vote to exit the hearing, and then a motion and a vote on a preferred sort of option. So,
I move to exit the hearing.
thank you. So, Mr. Golden, seconded by Mr. Turner. All those in favor of exiting the public hearing is unanimous. Thank you. Would anybody like to make a motion on a recommendation. Mr. Axel.
I'll make a motion that the Wilmington School Committee vote to not participate in the school choice program for the 2025-2026 school year.
Motion made, seconded by Mr. Golden. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Brand.
Thank you.
Okay. Excuse me, moving right along, that brings us to our consent agenda. We have approval of minutes, April 30th, 2025. Is there a motion? Mr. Golden, second. Dr. Bryson, all those in favor? Unanimous. And then we have warrants, grants 34, 35, revolving 63 through 67, local 93 through 99, food service 64 through 66, circuit breaker 27, special education 59 through 61, and payroll 5/7/2025. Is there a motion? Mr. Ragsdale, second. Mr. Golden. Mr. Turner?
Oh, that's good, second, sorry.
Okay. Motion made by Mr. Ragsdale, seconded by Mr. Golden, thirded by Mr. Turner. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. That brings us to,
Just my way to compliment Mr. Ruggiero when in his absence, all the excellent work responding to questions we have on the warrants every time.
oh goodness, that brings us to the superintendent's report. Dr. Brand.
Thank you. There are 4 items tonight under the report, all of which include information in the school committee packet. We'll go in order, starting with 6A, but I'd like to welcome Ms. Elliott to speak to this first one, Celebrate the Good.
Sure. So in your packet tonight is just an announcement around a grant that was received. So Michelle Levesque, our elementary STEM coordinator, applied for a grant through Stone and Bank and was awarded $1,500. And her reason for writing the grant was to get funding to be able to run a pilot after-school STEM program next year. Could be a before school, depending on the side of town you live on, or after school. And so she'll be using those funds to help start that seed program. So they came to present the check, as you can see, and it happened to be pajama day, so that's even more fun. So just a shout out to Stone and Bank and to Michelle for seeking out another grant opportunity.
It's fantastic.
That's great.
Thanks, Ms.
Congratulations to her.
Thank you. Moving on, item 6B, student cell phone use report, and I'll invite Becky Brown, who's here tonight, as well as Aaron Dunham, to come down. While they're making their way, just some table setting for this. You'll find in your packet there's a fairly extensive memo that we put together to provide the school committee with an update on the working group. Just as a reminder for all, both around the table as those that might be watching or might have been following this, earlier in the school year, I presented to the school committee a proposal to put together a working group that, with the primary intention of taking a closer look at cell phone use in schools with and by students. It's a topic that I think everyone is well aware is receiving increased and considerable attention across the country. Social media use, cell phone use by our youth, both inside, to be fair, as well as outside of schools. There is also a growing body of research in terms of the impact that these devices have on students' health and well-being. And it's something that obviously there is also concern about, not just on their well-being, but how these devices may interfere with or impact their learning in the classroom. This is a topic that more and more districts are and have been taking a look at. We have not spent time as of late as a school community doing so, and that was sort of the genesis for this idea of pulling together a group of stakeholders that would look at it. The ultimate goal of this working group, as a reminder, was to make recommendations to the school committee about future directions and where this might go, whether that be an emergence of school policy or school committee policy, procedures or expectations to help us within the school environment and while students are here to guide the use of cell phones and devices in schools. And ultimately, our hope is that this opens up this as a conversation and will be informative in terms of where we go next. This is not here, before I turn over to Aaron and Becky, this is not here for any kind of vote or any kind of approval tonight. There's some recommendations that we'll talk about, but it is, I think, an important topic worth talking about. So with that, I'll turn it over to Aaron and Becky, who will sort of walk us through the memo. So thanks, Aaron.
So first of all, I really appreciate the opportunity to facilitate this group. It was certainly a good learning experience for me. It was wonderful to have a student representative in the group as well, who was actually just sitting before you a few minutes ago, Jackson Kiley. He did a phenomenal job, really kind of even working closely with me around developing the survey, providing really useful input, from his perspective as a student. So we were able to meet for 5 scheduled sessions. We were able to do 2 additional sessions because there was just so much to discuss and review sort of post-survey, but initially had broken up into 4 subgroups, really thinking about sort of safety and security, sort of the cell phone research, what Superintendent Brand was just referencing, what are sort of our district policies in comparison with other districts, and just, again, sort of that stakeholder outreach and survey. So some of the key sort of takeaways is we had a pretty overwhelming amount of respondents. So approximately 800 students participated in grades 6 through 12. And it was pretty clear that based on the survey information that students are very comfortable with the ability to keep their cell phones on them throughout the school day, and sort of following what the current policy is, which is essentially, not using it during classroom time unless approved by a teacher, and, the ability to use it sort of during passing times and lunch and things like that. And so the student respondents really felt that kind of keeping policy status quo was what they felt most comfortable with. And certainly there are students at the secondary level that very much are using their cell phones appropriately. They're able to put them away during class time. They're able to even utilize things like eHall Pass. So staff are even, interfacing kind of with students by way of cell phone during the school day. So there certainly are times that it is being managed appropriately. I think what was pretty alarming with regard to student respondents was that when asked about distraction, most student respondents did not feel that cell phones were distracting in any type of way. And that really raised an alarm for us as a group. And, even kind of thinking about, gosh, if we could have reworded that question in a different way to perhaps get a better understanding of, what do they view as distraction? How do they understand, what that means and what that means for staff? So that was pretty, that was a huge takeaway, I think. In addition, we did ask students about sort of their feelings with regard to education. Do they think it contributes to bullying of any kind? And would they have felt it was useful, especially for high school students to have had maybe more education about digital literacy at a younger level? And, I would say probably less than 50% of respondents sort of felt like, yeah, maybe that would have been helpful, or no, thank you, that wouldn't have been helpful at all. For parents, we did provide the survey to parents at all grade levels. 58% of elementary school parents or caregivers indicated that their student never brings a cell phone to school. And when I say cell phone, also referencing devices, there's the use of sort of smartwatches and things like that. And so that was no surprise, really kind of considering considering the all grade levels. Again, we sort of had 70% of parents and caregivers at the elementary level saying that they are not contacting their student during the day, which is certainly positive. So that means that there's a system in place that is working by way of sort of going through the main office and things of that nature. For the secondary level, 80% of parents and caregivers felt that or agreed that their student does bring a cell phone or a device to school. Again, not a particularly surprising, number. Only 46% indicated that they are not concerned about their students' cell phone use during the school day, which again, I think as it relates to takeaways, really had us thinking, how do we support parents and caregivers really understanding sort of the research and the information that we're receiving with regard to risks, and making sure that there is some sort of shared norms, right, whether it be sort of in the community and a home that speaks to that. 41% of parents or caregivers at the secondary level were in support of being able to contact their student, during the school day when there's a case of emergency. So definitely quite different than what we're seeing at sort of the elementary level. And, I think when sort of in the open response for parents and caregivers, it wasn't just, there's a change in who's picking you up after school, but I think also really thinking about more critical incidents that worst case scenario that could happen during the school day, and that certainly was an area of concern for parents. 41% of secondary level parents and caregivers preferred that the cell phone use is allowed just during kind of passing periods and lunch, which sort of aligns with what the current policy is. For staff, there was, again, 200 plus staff were participated in the survey, and again, that was staff from all grade levels or from all buildings. 41% of respondents indicated that cell phones were a significant distraction during the school, during sort of lesson time and instruction. And also noting that 54% of staff respondents felt that cell phone use outside of the classroom was a huge distraction. And we had a lot of even our staff participants in the group sort of saying that if there was appropriate cell phone use sort of taking place outside of the classroom, sort of what gets kind of carried over into the classroom, and having to sort of mediate that and support students in refocusing is often very difficult. So no surprise, a majority of staff respondents indicated that they prefer a policy that does not allow cell phone use for the entirety of the school day. So again, really kind of thinking about key takeaways, I think we really felt that we want to protect sort of our staff from having to feel like they are constantly policing cell phone use during the school day, as opposed to sort of doing what they're intended to do with regard to academics. The data shows the impact of cell phone use for our youth, and I think there's an opportunity here to do a fair amount of education, both for our students and for our community, around how do we support you, how do we develop some norms, and really kind of considering a recommendation that there's no cell phone use during the school day in order to promote healthy engagement in academics, social interactions and things of that nature.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Mr. Golden.
Thank you very much. It was a real pleasure to work on the working group. I want to also thank the parents and staff who contributed so much to this. There's a couple pieces here for me. There's, for folks at home, the gossip and social dynamic aspect of this. Gossip existed before cell phones were in schools, right? Like bullying existed before cell phones were in schools. But as a catalyst, as a kind of the speed at which you can totally distort a person's day or drama happens class to class. Some of the teachers in this working group talked about that. Like, kids come back from lunch and there's no way they can focus because some post went around the whole school in the blink of an eye. There's that's kind of amplifying an existing problem, and then there's the newer problem of how addictive cell phones are, the dopamine hit that the notification can provide to the brain, to a growing brain. I think that's really deleterious. I'm really glad that the working group has come back with this recommendation of would you call this bell-to-bell?
Yes.
Yes.
Of a bell-to-bell policy. I went to a high school with a bell-to-bell policy. Was it perfect because all the kids followed it? No, not all the kids followed it perfectly, but that's the reality. But I found it to be incredibly helpful and to focus and to keeping that kind of drama from happening. So I'm very supportive of going that route. And yeah, I mean, I could say much more about it, but very passionate about this topic, and thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Golden. And we appreciate your work on the working group as well. Other
I think the
comments?
Attorney General's report supported the negative effects of cell phones on our youth and their mental health for a lot of reasons.
Mr. Exner.
So I'll co-sign what Nick said about participating in the working group. I think it was a really good group of people with a lot of great discussions. So where I've kind of come down on this is that First of all, there really is very clear movement in all different types of areas towards this type of bell-to-bell cell phone restriction. Other states have already implemented it, and there is legislation that has been filed in the Massachusetts legislature, supported by the Attorney General, as well as from the cell phone and social media toolkit, that makes it look like Massachusetts is also moving in that direction as well, which I think is the right direction. I do think that in terms of thinking about where do we go from here, is that I don't think we just wait for the legislature to pass a bill and sort of force it on everyone. I think this is something that we should be aiming to move towards ourselves, but to me, it is clearly far too late to possibly implement something like this for the coming school year. Because there are a lot of important details about how something like this would be implemented. And so the idea that like we would just come back at, here we are in May, and we come back next year in September and just suddenly, hey, no cell phone use at all in the building. And there are a lot of things we have to figure out just in terms of how is this actually going to be enforced and implemented. So do students have to put their phones away? Many districts use yonder bags, which are magnetically sealed bags, so the kids keep their phones with them but can't access them. But that, of course, has a cost and something that needs to be planned for. If parents can't contact their kids during the school day the way they're accustomed to, then they need a new way to do it. Like if we're going to say, well, instead of texting your kids, during the day to get a message to them, you have to call the school and, we'll pass your message along. Well, okay, we need to plan how that's going to work and make sure that we actually have ways that messages get to those students. That also needs thinking and planning. We need to have answers to questions about emergency procedures. If there's a lockdown or some other kind of school emergency, all right, what are we going to do in those situations? These are the concerns that people have, and it takes time to develop the answers to those concerns. And then even mundane things like right now we use hall pass, e-hall pass, so students use their phones in the high school for hall passes. We would obviously need something different. And so I think there are answers to all of these things. Other schools, again, and entire states are already doing this, but it does take some time to actually, put the implementation, in progress. And the last piece of it is that we need to bring the community along with us more. So I think the community is, again, not quite ready. We haven't been able to have enough of the conversation, even though we had the survey. The survey is obviously an important step, but it requires, more action with the community to both get kind of the community norms that we want to implement. And that was something that was a big part also of the Attorney General's toolkit. There's a whole section on community norms about both what cell phones do as far as academic and distraction and the social aspect of it. But even just, getting the idea across that, you generally shouldn't be probably texting your students during the day. Even if they're only going to, check it during lunch or so forth. But just like, for the most part, unless it's truly necessary, that these are probably practices, like best practices that we want to try to inculcate in the community at large. So I think that this is the direction we should move in, but I definitely think that this is something to kind of aim for next year as we have to do additional work to actually put the pieces in place and make sure that people understand, that we're going to have answers to some of the concerns that will arise.
Thank you.
Did you have your hand up?
Go ahead.
Can I go?
Dr. Burris?
Thank you, David. That was really helpful. I have a couple of things. One, to do all of that, will this working group continue as is? Will it include, I guess, who's going to help with that rollout? Have we thought about that yet?
We haven't. Because part of that was, in terms of sort of this working group's role and function and purpose, rather, was to bring sort of these findings here to then inform where, as a committee, you might wish to go next. I would say, as a reminder, that this to me falls into, there's a couple of avenues. There's a whole lot to say, of course, about this. You have a policy that this could take that trajectory or direction. Or, of course, it can also not be policy, and it can be part of the general expectations for school rules, of which also are approved by the committee. So it was my thought to see where this would emerge, where the recommendations landed, and where the sort of the sense of the committee was in terms of, well, where next, and where do we go next? But I think absolutely there needs to be some entity, some engine, some group, whether it's this group or some other subset that includes multiple stakeholders to advance this, if this is the direction you're interested in going and pursuing. But this group didn't sign up necessarily
Sure.
for that next step.
Can I just ask a quick follow-up? So I agree with pieces of this, absolutely. I'm a little concerned about what I'm going to call like the policing of it and so for me to feel comfortable with anything like this, I'd have to hear from the all of the administrators who would be responsible for sort of adhering to this. And what I'd really like it to be, I'm hoping that what will come from this will be a healthy sort of like use of cell phone. Like, how do we use it in a way that is meaningful and healthy, but not just, don't take it out, don't take it out. Like, I don't think that that's actually good training, especially for a high schooler who is then going into college, who is then going to have to navigate some of this. And so I want to make sure that we're preparing them, truly preparing them for real life, right? So some of us have our phones out, we have them down, some of them have them up. Like, I want them to walk away knowing, like, this is what it looks like to be a respectful cell phone user. Not, we just keep it in our bag all day, and if we take it out, we get a detention. Like, I just don't want it to feel like that. So I just wouldn't feel, as we go through this next phase, like, yes, having it in your bag for the day feels good to me. However, I don't want to put more on our administrators, and so I would be really uncomfortable doing anything without hearing from Mr. Gendron, Mr. Staffier, Mr. Miranda, Mr. Kyra, everybody who would be responsible for those sorts of pieces, because I don't want to become that district.
I agree with you, and, you know, in the sort of the open response section for students, there were a lot of comments about we need to be able to learn and to be able to assert some level of independence. I think similar to what you're saying. If you just tell us no, how are we going to learn the right way to do that? And so I think we'd have to be incredibly thoughtful, especially around sort of if we are to do any type of curriculum focused on digital literacy at an earlier age, to start to kind of prepare for how you manage those situations. Because yes, they are going to move on to adulthood and college, and they're going to have to figure out how to navigate those things. So yes, absolutely.
Cerner.
So first of all, again, thank you all very much to the entire group. I really appreciate all the effort. There's a few things that really I find striking. I think the middle school piece about we don't think it's a distraction is a clear indication that they need some experience without it to realize what it feels like to not be distracted. Because there's clearly a learning moment there that I think they've grown up with it from a very young age. They and the high school students, but particularly the middle school ones, it's been part of their life. There's never been a point when it wasn't, and so they don't know that level of impact. And so it is a really, as you mentioned, a very important point for us to be aware of. I'm really, really concerned with the 41% of parents who feel like they should have access during an emergency to their children. If we have a cell phone ban of some form in place, I've had parents say to me, I would give my child a second phone to put in the bag if we did that approach, so that I could still contact them around it. And so having parents who would actively work contrary to the practice, the policy, or the procedure, really means we won't be successful. So as long as that number is 41%, if it's 10%, it's a manageable thing. If it's 30, 40, 50%, we have a real challenging deployment and enforcement. Having the parents say one thing at home and then having that's a challenge. And then to the staff piece, and this is why I've been so interested in this topic, the 41% a significant distraction, 30% extremely difficult. That's the key thing. It's impacting teachers and their ability to do what we need them to do. And so it's so important. I think where I get to on all of it, though, is what we do at the elementary level would be one thing, particularly 4th and 5th grade as they start to get them. What we do at the middle school might be something different and might be the most strict. And what we do at the high school level might be a step more lenient to the learning piece, but also to their maturity level. And so I do struggle with the idea of bell to bell, all grades. Doesn't feel like one size fits all is the right thing. So there's a lot to it. I certainly look forward to where we might go and having the administrators and teachers and parents and students craft the proposals for practical application of how this might be in the following fall, to Mr. Ragsdale's point, not this coming one. So thank you very much for all of
When Aaron and I talked about this yesterday, I think if we do bell to bell and we know clearly that our parents are concerned about an active shooter, let's just put it out there on the table, that we would have to do a better job of talking about what is our plans, like how has this district prepared for such an event, so that they're more informed that their child using their cell phone or them using their phone to get in touch with their child is not part of our district safety protocol in any way. And I understand that as a mother who had children in this building at one time. But do we make decisions based on that one piece? And I know it is a big concern for parents, but I don't know if we allow that to, how we use cell phones on a day-to-day basis across the district.
Good point. So thank you. One quick follow-up to that point. And part of it is also education of parents. And part of that, there's been people that have come and spoke either here and in other places about how dangerous it is to contact your child during those situations, and that actually you're making this, as a parent, it's very concerning. You would want to be able to access them, but are you going to make it worse? There was one district recently on the South Shore where during what was an emergency that they thought there was a situation, the parents rushed the school and got in the way of the emergency responders. So it was, in that case, it was their cars instead of the phones, but it was still the concept of how do we plan for it, how do we express the planning, and how do we, help them understand how they should and shouldn't, and what's the best practice for safety, is a whole lot of learning for the parents. You're absolutely right, and I think there's a lot of planning on that side for sure.
So like on the other side of that, the district safety committee is doing a lot, like really stepping up their, what we're doing and, the audit and everything like that. So maybe at some point we need to message that out to our parents more, even aside from the cell phone, but obviously to help parents.
Thank you.
Dr. McCauley, and then back to Mr. Ragsdale.
Sure, yeah. So a lot of my questions were already answered by all the other comments and everything. Just wanted to get a few thoughts out there. One thing I also noticed on the survey that wasn't talked about much because the number was low was cyberbullying. It was still 15%.
Yeah.
So that's 15% too high, in my opinion, right? And then, that's something that I have heard anecdotally from other parents that happens, right? And, the cell phones can be weaponized. And for those 15% of students, you're still talking about maybe 50 to 100 kids. That's a lot, right? So I think that's something really important we need to consider here is like how these phones are being used a lot and what the purpose is. Totally agree with all the concerns around the emergency. I kind of saw that theme in a lot of the feedback, and that's something that is going to be very challenging for, I think, us, all, we're all going to make this policy, right, or whatever it's going to be, to try to figure out how we can do this in a manner where people are very reliant on the technology right now, which we didn't have growing up, but that's where they're at now, right? So how can we meet them halfway on this, right? And then I think last thing, I really liked Mr. Ragdale's recommendation that I think we need a kind of holistic, like bottoms-up approach towards crafting this, right? Really also liked what Dr. Bryson said too about bringing administrators because they're the ones actually enforcing it. The one thing I would say is like whoever is doing this, and maybe I'm part of that group too, we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are a lot of jurisdictions out there doing it. Great Britain actually banned it through their whole country, the phones, so we can look what they did. Australia has their social media ban, we're not saying, they're the models, but we can take good ideas from these and then kind of collate our own policy that we think will suit our needs, right?
Dr. Brand raised this topic at Leadership on Friday, and there were parents in our leadership group who have students at the high school level where their high schools are bell to bell. So I think we do have some resources within our own leadership group that we could tap into. So it would be both an administrator's point of view, but also a parent, But I agree, we shouldn't really reinvent this. We should try to tap into other resources.
As it relates to the bullying, it makes me really want to take a really good look at what our bullying curriculum is right now, what it looks like for the secondary level. Is it very clear and understanding that this particular behavior is cyberbullying versus something else? So it makes me think about just sort of the education as a whole, and how are we doing with regard to that piece? Yeah.
Mr. Isaac.
There was a lot of discussion during the working group sessions about our desire to not have staff have to be the phone police. That was an outcome we really didn't want to have, that they have to be constantly on the lookout and constantly put your phone away, or, if there's a policy of discipline, well, now I have to write you up and send you in. It's like, this is not the way we wanted to do. This is partly why I generally favor an implementation that actually just takes that out of the hands of the staff, like where it's sealed in the magnetic bag, for example. I think that also makes it easier, obviously, for the students to follow it. Like, if you're just sort of told you are not allowed to access your phone for the entire time in school, but then it's like, oh, but near the hallway, you felt a vibration, there's some text waiting for you. And it's just like, look, if you know you can't get to it, then you just kind of don't worry about it and don't think about it. And of course, people also stop texting you if they know you're not going to be able to respond until later in the day. I also just want to mention that I've been in several schools that have implemented these policies, and they really have great things to say. I was actually in a school on Monday in a local community that had implemented at their middle school, it was, a bell-to-bell ban, and they, principal was just like, everyone loves it, and even now the parents love it. And, again, that's just anecdata, but I think that generally when you find schools that have implemented this, I think you're hearing a lot more positive feedback from them than negative feedback. Another school that I was in previously said that there was a 50% reduction in bathroom trips after they implemented the cell phone policy. A lot of kids who are going to the bathroom, not because they need to go to the bathroom, because they want to play on their cell phones. And but I will leave that there, because we don't have any decisions to make today.
Nick, Stephen, and then Will.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, and I really appreciate, again, reiterating, that the goal is not to have teachers and staff becoming the phone police. That's like, honestly, one of the top reasons to be doing this. But I will say, I really appreciate what the recommendation is. I think, however we kind of implement it over the next year and we try to make it work for whichever grade level, I think the overarching goal remains, it's the bell-to-bell framework. And then it's like, how do we implement within that umbrella framework? Because I fear that if we have this process start up, I agree with the timeline that you were talking about of going to not this coming year, but the next year. But I fear that from the experience of the working group, we might just kind of be running in circles a lot if we don't have that clear, what you've already determined is the recommendation for within that category of bell-to-bell. So tweaks within that, sure, but I am glad that we're going to stay the course on that as the overarching kind of theme.
Sarah?
I think I'm good for tonight, thank you. She kicked me.
Appreciate the work, sort of shepherding and spearheading this. It sounds like we'll have a new cell phone work group coming up, but this is perfect. Dr. Brandon,
Yeah, and thank you for the discussion, and thank you, Aaron, for leading this effort, and for those who are part of this. This is absolutely a hot topic today. Maybe late yesterday, the Superintendent's Association just sent out to superintendents a survey to gather feedback and perspective on how districts are approaching this very topic. And I quote, as was said in the email, the body of the email, "Some legislators have suggested statewide ban would give districts the ability to implement a difficult societal change, but also recognize the responsibility for implementing such would be at the district level." So it's hard to predict where this goes, and I know I've had conversation with some who know more about how the bill process works and the timeline that might be involved in that. But my sense is, and I'm sure many are on the table, this is getting a lot of traction and momentum. So even if this was or could be fast-tracked, and even if there is a ban-to-ban implemented at the state level, this would clearly signal that you're going to, as a school committee and as a district, still have to wrestle with what that looks like and who does that apply to. And even if there was some variation, tweak, adjustment, as you were mentioning, Mr. Golden, that it's not everyone, you're still going to have to clearly go through a process to figure out where you're going to land. And I suspect, and I recognize you need to hear from more administrators, teachers, and so on. I suspect that the varying views will probably hold true for a lot of these constituent groups, but it's something that it's work that clearly has to continue, because if this is dropped, if this is a bell-to-bell sort of law across the Commonwealth, you're still going to left as a committee to decide what you're going to do. So it's a conversations you have to have. So, thank you. To be continued is the larger point, clearly.
Thank you.
Both very much. All right, Dr. Brand, fields and grounds signage update.
Thank you. I will ask some of my colleagues to come forward here to speak to and help us speak to this and respond to any questions. Lisa King, principal from Shawsheen, Noel Calley, teacher at the Shawsheen, and Ryan Gendron, I think, is in the mix. If you don't mind, Ryan, too, coming forward. And places you.
Noelle wanted me to explain our attire. So she was in a field trip today, and I'm coming from a baseball game.
There you go.
Go Wilmington. Yes.
Thought you were just showing school spirit.
School spirit, yep.
Perfect.
Yes.
This, the memo, as outlined, talks about a proposal based upon feedback that I have received from specifically our school leaders, a number of our school leaders over the last bit of time. Probably this first emerged, I guess it was last year. In a nutshell, we have a variety of schools with varying playgrounds and campuses and fields around them. And currently, there is no restriction on the use of those fields and grounds and such by community members. There's none. There's no signage. There's no commitment by the town to say they shall not be available to anyone during the school day. You can find that certainly in other school communities, and some of you may have grown up in that or know that from visiting others. We do not have anything of this sort here in Wilmington. And so, as I've come to learn, particularly in the nicer weather, these campuses are open to anyone, whether it's a Wilmington resident or not, who might wish to visit there with their children or they themselves or their pets or all of the above. And at times, this creates challenges as it relates to supervision of students and the mutual use of those spaces with those visitors, to be respectful, we'll call it. So this is something that I've been thinking more about, having more conversations with the leadership team. I've talked with the chief of police, as well as the town manager, to raise this. I have to say that, as I captured in the memo, both are very supportive of this idea. It's something, to be honest, we didn't talk at any great length, but it was a rather brief conversation with them respectively to say, okay, that would make sense if this is a direction that, as a district, you'd want to go in. So as outlined in the memo, there's a number of concerns that have come forth. I won't go through them in the interest of time here, but you can see them listed there, and some of those challenges that have endured. The benefits that are perceived, and this memo, I should have said at the outset, I've shared with our leadership team for their feedback, and we're sort of co-authoring this, so this is not just from myself. But I did think it would be important for you to hear from these folks representing, those that are on the ground, literally and figuratively, and contending with some of these challenges. And so you can see, though, the ultimate proposal here, the recommendation for your consideration is that all school grounds, including playgrounds and athletic fields, would be closed to all visitors from 30 minutes before the start of the school day to 30 minutes after dismissal on days when school is in session. So maybe just real quick, Lisa or Noelle or Ryan, anything that you think that I didn't mention that you think would be good for the committee to know and to be thinking about?
Yeah, I think I can start, and I'm sure Noelle and Ryan can add to it, but especially for, speaking of Shawsheen Elementary School, it's just that location where we get a lot of people from other towns too, Billerica and other areas come to the Shawsheen. And I think one thing to note is when these new playgrounds were built many years ago, we didn't have the playgrounds we have today. We didn't have Yen Tiles, we did not have Silver Lake, those are fairly new. So I think and things have changed, right, with safety. We've mentioned this over the past couple of years at our district safety committee meeting. Noelle and I personally experience this all the time. We have frequent visitors that come to the playground. Students are uncomfortable. They're used to everybody they see wearing a badge or a name tag. Teachers are uncomfortable because now, instead of watching the students, they're watching an adult who we do not know. And they're watching the adult watching our children. So what we currently do is they call for an administrator. We go outside. Sometimes we're doing this 3 times a day during recess time. We're leaving, whatever we're doing, we're going outside, and then I or my assistant will approach them and kindly ask them, because we don't feel like we can say, oh, see the sign there, or it's a policy, or something like that. And I will kindly say, oh, and I'm even more, oh, just during these hours when the kid's out here, I know your child wants to play. I have like a whole speech, Silver Lake's right down the street. There's Rotary Park. We didn't have Rotary Park back then. That's 3 new playgrounds that we have. So we do have access for town members to access other safe, children-friendly playgrounds. And it is very uncomfortable to have to do this and to approach them and ask them to kindly leave. A lot of times, parents are on the equipment with children, and our children are worried. The staff don't feel safe about it. It's uncomfortable for us to, always have to approach people. And we've had some instances where we've had to call safety officers. I've had people, after I speak to them, call the town and say, oh, why can't we play there? And then, it's just, it's a lot of stress. In our building, you can't get in and out. You have the Raptor system, you have a Corey check, and here we are allowing strangers who we don't know watching our children on the playground. And it has increased. It has. I mean, in the fall, it's not in the winter. We don't usually have a big problem, obviously, but fall and currently spring now, we get a big issue. Today, I was out there 3 times. I'm even out there sometimes with translation devices. I was today to speak with families, and they are pretty good about leaving, but again, it's very uncomfortable, and we do have some people who will not leave. They think they have the right to be there, and we just feel like we need more to be able to say to them, no, like, this is our policy, or this is our procedures, and here is the sign, and be able to point to it. Currently, my staff are not comfortable approaching people because we don't have something for them to point to. And I know Noelle's good about it, though. She'll say something.
I don't have a problem approaching people. No, we were outside and we're walking the children all the way across the parking lot, and that doesn't happen very quickly. That takes time. So you've got all these kids walking, and we're like directing traffic. Cars think that they can come in and out, and we don't feel safe about that. I've approached parents before that are there with toddlers, little kids, and we're always worried that some child running around enjoying their recess safely is going to crash into this little child. And, we've got parents looking at us like I'm supposed to be monitoring these kids when everyone is just playing, and they deserve to have that time to play safely. We've had parents swear at us. We've had kids come through, like teenagers come through, and, the cars are flying. And for whatever reason, I don't know what it is, but the Shawshene School is located in an area that we have had more strange visitors, and I don't know why that is, but people in the woods, it does give you this like unsafe feeling.
But to be fair, it's certainly more than a Shawshene issue, and it
Certainly.
does vary
Yeah.
on the different campuses. And Ryan, maybe just briefly.
I think they captured it well. We've trained our staff, if they see someone they don't recognize, to contact the main office so we can check it out. And I do worry about like fatigue of that system, of seeing unfamiliar people so frequently that it's no longer like creates the same concern that it should during the school day. The interactions similarly begin kind and then get less kind, as I think well-intended visitors truly feel like they are supposed to have access, particularly here to facilities. I think when the building was built, there was kind of a emphasis of there being some communal use. So I think the clarification that this is not banning visitors from access, but creating parameters around the school day is like a really important distinction. And it feels like most of the interactions are the result of miscommunication about expectations that the signage could really clearly preempt and prevent.
I'm gonna go first this time, if it's okay. I have a couple of questions. So understanding that there's a recommendation here, if the committee were to support this, maybe this is for you, if you've had conversations with the chief, who's gonna enforce this?
Well, as Ms. King said, I mean, we would employ the assistance of our school resource officers. We haven't gone to the length of talking about is it trespassing response or something like that. I'm not sure about that, but certainly it's a fair question that we would certainly further explore, so there's a clear understanding about how that would be governed and managed.
Which I appreciate. I mean, I know, school resource officers based here, but not necessarily at the elementary levels, and so there's a gap in coverage, essentially. So as long as we
Right.
are thinking about hammering out how that's gonna work.
Yeah, and keep in mind that we have a middle school officer on the Carter Lane campus, so you've
Sure.
got multiple schools there, and then we have a third school resource officer that is a floater and really is responding to the elementary schools as situations arise.
Right.
So,
Thank you. 30 minutes before the start of the school day to 30 minutes after dismissal. What about buildings that have CARES programs?
yeah, so I would look at CARES as part of our programs and services, and to me that's an extension of the school day. But I think you get into, and I know there's some sports leagues or community rec leagues that might start later. I think, the bulk of this is during recess
Sure.
and during lunch, and so I think that idea of 30 minutes before or 30 minutes after could have been 20, but something that sort of more is a bookend to say slightly before and slightly after the school day, but really during the school day. These campuses and spaces are for our students and our students only, would be the intent.
And Mr. Finley, if I could add something,
Please.
I think it is important to not pigeonhole us to 11 to 1 is recess time right now, because we know that these things could change with schedules, we could change our recess system, so, like Dr. Brent said, during the school day is really something that we're looking for.
No, I appreciate that, and I think that's probably the right approach. I'm just trying to sort of plan it out in my head, essentially. For example, we have a track here that I imagine when it's nice out, folks want to use, and now we're gonna essentially say, from bell to bell, the public can't use the track.
Yeah, here that's appropriate, because our PE classes will go outside.
Certainly.
They have complaints about people watching the high school students participating in different games and activities that certainly weren't a response, that puts both the responding staff and the community member in a uncomfortable situation.
Sure. No, and look, I appreciate all the thought and the attention that went into this. I think as a member of the public, I struggle with this one a little bit, but as a member of this committee, I mean, the safety of our students and our staff is really priority number one, so that kind of makes sense to me, so. But thank you for answering the questions. Nick, and then Stephen, and then Jen.
I thought I was first, but
before me.
whatever.
Sorry, Jen, apparently Jen was first.
No, Nick was first. You can go, Nick.
So I'll just say,
But I was definitely before you.
as a new parent who lives over by Shawsheen, I can really sympathize with the parents who, you go over there, you're like, oh, it's such a great playground. You're like, I can take my kid. But again, Lisa, what you're saying, yes, there are other playgrounds that they could go to. And because, yes, again, living right there are definitely some characters that I've seen during the school day on the playground. I'm like, well, you don't look like you work at the school. And so I'm sorry to hear that you have to do three times a day. Translation device, kudos, for making sure people are, communicated to. My concern with the enforceability, and I appreciate Mr. Finley for bringing that up, is the field aspect, right? Because if you're at the north, that apartment complex, there's a cut through right onto that massive field. People take their dogs all the time. So I get an SRO responding to the playground at the Shawsheen in lieu of the staff, that makes sense. But are they gonna hustle all the way to the end of the field, or are we just gonna hope that the sign being there dissuades people from taking their dogs out onto the Shawsheen and North fields for dog business? It's that enforceability of that distance that I'm wondering about. I'm fully in support of having this, but I'm wondering implementation-wise, because those fields are gigantic, and people definitely cut through a lot.
I think I would say that the distinction here is not so much about a cut-through or somebody walking across, but rather sort of stopping and setting up whatever kind of activity. That would be the end goal here. Right, we have a lot of fields that passerbys, and whether it's Shawsheen, but that's very different in my mind than what some of the things are that have been described here. So
I was just going to say that I think the idea of the enforceability isn't so much as a worry to me as much if that sign is there, then it's going to deter, the people. and give them, then it'll become more of a pattern, and the town residents will understand and start to realize, oh, this isn't really a good time for me to come, that I can come at this time instead, or I could go here instead. So the signage would just help, kind of help us in that moment to say, this is a thing, please respect it, and then the more that it's there, then the town's gonna get used to it.
And I mean, I will say, the enforceability right now is me and the administrators. So, I'm the one going out there and having to enforce it because I'm still not comfortable. If I am in a situation where a parent is not leaving or taking 15 to 20 minutes, I am standing next to that parent uncomfortably. And I say parent, I really mean community member. I don't mean a parent of our school. I mean a citizen, and it could be from another town. So what's happening is, the enforceability is me right now, right? So if the parent or the citizen is standing there for a long time trying to gather their child, I know that my staff and my students feel uncomfortable. So, and I'm watching the adult that is watching their child until they are able to leave. I haven't had a situation yet where somebody said, no, I'm not leaving, but we have encountered upset people, and so it's just going to give empower the teachers and the staff that are out there to be able to say, this is our policy, or please see the sign there, thank you. And then if for some reason someone wouldn't leave or there was a situation, then we would call the resource officer. We don't call the resource officer when someone's out on the playground. We handle it, we ask kindly, and that's what we're doing now because we don't feel like we have the ability to say straight out, we say, could you please leave? These are some other options, that kind of thing.
Dr. Bryson?
It's my turn. So I'm in full support of this. I feel like this has been around a bit. So part of me sitting here going, wait, didn't we already talk about this? So it's funny to me, but there must have been some pushback somewhere along the way. So I'm happy that the town manager and the chief of police are on board with this, because I think that's my first question. Like, wait a minute, is the town in support of this? What I would ask, and I was trying to navigate a little bit, but that we post on our website sort of the hours. I think sometimes it's hard to find the hours of schools, and so I think people will want to know when it is open, and I think it should be on our site, but I also think it should be on the town site.
Has to be on the sign as well.
Right.
Yeah, I think it needs to be clear, and I also think having something on the site that makes the public options and you can go here and here and here. I mean, there's many other places for you to do these sorts of things, and dog parks and dog walking, and all sorts of things. So I feel like if we can just be thoughtful about that. And my last question is about the indoor track, which is sort of separate, but I've been here for sort of a weekend event and had just citizens come in and say, oh, can I use the track? And I think they can. Right, but I don't really know the rules around that. So I feel like this is part of that. They can't use the indoor track during the school day, but I think there is some.
It's an application process.
I think, an application process for dedicated evening hours, but I don't recall the specific times. I know it's something that Mr. Ingram wrestles with when we're having athletic events, and he might prefer that outdoor track not have, participants during a game, but I do believe that there's some kind of allocation of time. But I'd have to review the specifics.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Turner?
So,
Dr. McCauley?
three things. One, I imagine as a teacher, you've got 20 moving bodies running around a playground. It's tough enough to keep track of them, let alone somebody else. So I fully support the teacher's need to be able to focus on the students, and I fully support the safety need. I do wonder a little bit about finesse in terms of the exact rules. I don't remember when the soccer leagues start on the Shawsheen fields. I don't remember, and to the high school point, you've got so much going on the fields after school. I think this feels right, whether it's 30 minutes or 15 or 20, but still, when you've got all those other things happening on this track piece, is just the bell-to-bell idea the right answer for the high school, or should it be more? I don't think so, but I don't know.
I think it's a good question and maybe something that warrants further discussion, but I think our largest priority is the school day.
Okay.
Because during a lacrosse game, we have no real way to measure who's a parent watching their kid or who's a scout or who's walking their dog. And that's, I think, separate from like what we're really trying to resolve here, which is like that during the school day part, where there's really no rationale for another person to be there.
Okay, thank you.
I can help answer the field question. So I believe you still need to get a permit. So for soccer, it's a permit, and they don't start till 3:30. So the only other time anyone uses the field is like Abundant Life has a permit certain times of the year. So, and they go to and we know, so we expect them, and we don't check for their permit, but we know that this is a permanent, so that's okay. If other people, that doesn't really happen, but if all of a sudden a group of people are playing soccer during the school day when the kids are out there, I do the same thing, I approach them too, even if it's not on the playground.
And when the Abundant Life is there, then the teachers are informed, so I know that I'm
Yes.
going out there and I know that
Yes.
there's something out there that's okay to be out
That
there.
it's safe and that they're,
Makes sense.
they've gone through the town.
Yeah, so I think a lot of questions that were already asked. General, I'm supportive of this. I think you both articulated all your reasons really well. Before I think ready to implement this, I think there are a couple lingering concerns though I have. It's more logistics. So like soccer at the Shawsheen and cares. So I've seen cares happening. Cars are swooping in to drive the kids to soccer practice and all that. And it's just a sea, a mix of tons of people and everything like that. So I think we got to think a little carefully about that, how for at Shawsheen specifically, we are going to work with CARES. There are these concerns, I think, at the north at Woburn Street, but there's just not as much people using those fields after school as like at the Shawsheen does, right? But I think both those schools will have to have some consideration on that as well, especially like Woburn Street in the north because they end so late. Like, I think there are sports practices for older kids that are starting like maybe even before school ends, potentially. But I think we need to check on that, especially with CARES too. And then, high school, totally agree. I think it makes sense end to end, right? The fields, the track, they're used all day and everything like that. So I think you explained that well. One high school I've been to locally around here because I was exploring. They actually have their track shut down with big signage till 6:30 p.m. No ifs, ands, or buts. So, because I went to go, my daughter had soccer practice, like, oh, go running at the track here, and I saw the sign. I'm like, nope, my plans are changing. Yeah. But thanks for bringing these up.
Mr. Exler.
I kind of categorize this topic under this is why we can't have nice things.
Yes.
Because, I feel just like if people were just responsible and reasonable and like don't go and use a playground while kids are, in a school or there at recess, then maybe things like this wouldn't be necessary. And I don't like closing off access to some of these spaces, but I like even less some of the situations that clearly we are getting into. And so I think I'm going to reluctantly, but still, firmly support this. I think that as far as kind of some of the timing, that is something that obviously we'll need to think about as far as getting the times right. And I think it probably makes sense ultimately to maybe even not necessarily tie it to the school day officially, but just actually have basically between this hour and this hour, no access, only school access during these hours, and not necessarily have to get into well, when does the school day start? When does it end? What counts as school hours after practice? The high school is, of course, the biggest issue with after hours practice and so forth. But yeah, this seems to be a place where we unfortunately have to go.
Thank you. It wasn't, it's a recommendation and really to try and get a sense of the committee. I mean, I'm not looking for a vote. I don't think that that's necessary unless you would disagree, but the mere fact that we do have, as was mentioned, the police chief on board, the town manager on board, and the points around, really, I recognize after this conversation going forward, and thank you for your understanding, it's my thought to put together something that becomes a communication tool, not just within our district and families, but also at the town level. There's clearly a lot of folks that don't have points of connection, children in our school system, but having the town manager on board is immensely helpful, obviously, so he can, through his office, socialize all of this. The times that we're open, we do have a space on our website that really clearly notes the operational times. But anyway, some things to package together. But we can do so, we can get this together in place and then really use the coming months to socialize this, to start the school year off with this in place, and also have the signage put together and erected. So we've got some things that we can think about, and the feedback here is helpful. So thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Just question for, kind of for the committee is, does this seem like something that should go to the policy committee, or just stay within management and implementation?
Cool question on that. I don't know offhand the exact policies we have related to building security. I would think this would require the same level of scope as building security, ground security would fall into the same scope. So to the extent we have it, I would think it would be in addition to that. To the extent we don't, other than we say we shall maintain security and safety of our buildings and grounds, if that's the policy, then we're good. If we go into more detail, then I would defer to the policy committee on what we would need to do further, but I don't think we have to if we're not, I mean, we don't have to do something new or different for this as opposed to what we're already doing for the buildings, I think.
I would be inclined to think that we probably don't need something in the policy handbook about this. This seems more like an operational issue of management of the schools.
Makes sense.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you
very
all.
much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Ryan, you can stay. We're gonna do things out of order. Okay. We've got some guests, so we can start getting some, as long as the committee has no objection,
I object.
we'll move to the first item of new business, which is the school improvement plan with Mr. Gendron from the high school.
All right. Deal. I appreciate that. All right. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to review progress regarding the school improvement plan for Wilmington High School over the past 2 years. We're proud to highlight the effort of our students and educators to the community, and grateful for the continued support of the town, district leadership team, and the school committee. This was a 2-year school improvement plan that encompassed 3 goals, each with multiple initiatives. The first goal was designed around building a multi-tiered system of supports, or MTSS for short. The second goal was about expanding student access and choice. And the third goal was aligned with the district's strategic priority 5, We Are One Community. Provided in the packet is a table listing each of the initiatives connected to Goal 1 with references to the deliverables or measurable outcomes of success. As a result of this goal, we now have an operational system for MTSS, which includes formal and informal data monitoring, a menu of targeted interventions for academic and social emotional needs, as well as a new incoming data dashboard for reviewing student performance all in one place. The MTSS system in Goal 1 is designed to improve outcomes for all students, and here we focus on MCAS results. For the first time, WHS has a proficiency rate of over 70% in all 3 MCAS subjects. The last time WHS was over 70% for both ELA and math was 2019, and there was no science exam at that time. The performance is significantly above the state averages reported in the blue text. The class of 2026 improved performance compared to their own 8th grade results in all 3 subjects. Compared to last year's results, the plus 12 SGP, or student growth percentile in math, is particularly significant. And while MCAS is only one way to measure student progress, we're certainly proud of the efforts of our students and staff. The MTSS system also prioritizes improving student attendance. Students who miss many days of school are more at risk to fall behind or disengage from school. Our attendance data shows significant improvement across multiple indicators. The graphs I'm projecting tonight are improvements to those in your packets. And thank you to Ms. Ingersoll for help for the presentation. All of the data reported here does include excused absences. So some students in the 5 to 9 range, they could all be excused legitimate absences. We included them because they're still days out of school. The 5 to 9 range represents an attendance rate of 95 to 97%, which is still quite good. Our overall school attendance rate for 2024 was 95%, which puts us in the top 14% of schools statewide. 10 absences is the first reporting threshold in our DESE attendance report. The second graph shows a continued significant decrease in the number of students with 10+ absences since 2022.
And that's one of the new additions that's not in the packet, but I think really important to highlight the work. For students above 10 absences, certainly in the 15 to 19 or 20-plus ranges, our assistant principals, school counselors, and school social workers are closely involved on a case management basis, working collaboratively to problem solve and remove barriers. We really appreciate their dedication to supporting students and families in that way, which I think is, again, highlighted in that 10-plus absence graph. Goal 2 involved extensive work redesigning the school schedule and updating the program of studies, which we've detailed at previous meetings. The new schedule, program of studies changes, and course level expectations charts has successfully expanded access and choice and increased consistency across classes. Defining high expectations for college prep, honors, and AP has empowered students and teachers to work together to meet those standards. As a result, we've seen widespread improvement, including the performance of AP students on their exams. 84% of last year's AP students earned a score of 3 or more, the highest rate for that in the past 5 years. We believe that reflects the Goal 2 work to create increased consistency in course level expectations, in this case AP. 54% of the class of 2024 took at least one AP course during their time at WHS. We also earned gold ratings for college credit and college optimization. Congratulations to the students and staff for their AP-related accomplishments. Goal 3 focused on increasing sense of pride, connectedness, and inclusiveness for all WHS stakeholders. Certainly no one or two initiatives can directly accomplish that goal, so this page has several. Overall, we feel we have successfully connected students, staff, and families as valued members of our school community. One way of measuring student connectedness is through our Panorama survey. Our spring results are not yet available, but fall 2024 results show continued improvement. Although sense of belonging topic doesn't have a national comparison, it remains one of our strongest areas of self-reporting. WHS ranks in the 80 to 99th national percentile for 4 out of the 5 topics. When looking back at the one-year comparison, there was modest growth in 4 topics with a 2% step back in 2. But when looking at the 2 or 3-year comparisons, you can see more significant gains, with the greatest increases taking place in emotional regulation and social perspective taking. We're pleased to see such significant change in the self-reported well-being measures over that time span. Self-efficacy remains the lowest percent favorable outcome, and self-efficacy is defined by Panorama as how much students believe they can succeed in achieving academic outcomes. There's another addition to the packet, which is this breakdown of self-efficacy in the Panorama survey. In preparing for tonight's presentation, it felt like a bit of a discrepancy to report on students achieving these academic outcomes, but then note the self-reporting low self-reporting for that. And so this slide lists the 5 self-efficacy questions, which ask students to respond, how sure are they, in response to various prompts. Unless students answered very sure or extremely sure, everything else was considered an unfavorable result, including somewhat sure. Looking at the lowest rated self-efficacy question, how sure are you that you'll remember what you learned in your current classes next year? We see that 47% of students responded they are somewhat sure they'll remember. At first glance, a high school student feeling somewhat sure they'll remember does not sound like an unfavorable result. However, for this question, it did count that way. Interestingly, Panorama calculates this middle somewhat response favorably for some topics and unfavorably for some. If this somewhat sure was counted favorably, then the response rate for this question would be 85% instead of 39%, which would of course impact the self-efficacy score. For this question, only 15% of students responded with a clearly unfavorable result, a little sure or not sure at all. And in none of the other questions did the clearly unfavorable results exceed 15%. So this elaboration is not to shift attention away from self-efficacy, but I think before we consider how to react, it's important to analyze how that score was created and to better understand the student responses. And we look forward to exploring additional data points to more fully inform our understanding moving forward. Although it's not time to present next school year's improvement plan, two goal priorities are emerging around instruction and curriculum, as well as continued expansion of our MTSS process. I look forward to a return in the fall to detail these goals in more detail and to outline the related initiatives. And so I thank you for the time, and I welcome any questions and feedback.
Thank you, Mr. Gendron. Questions, comments, feedback? Dr. McCauley.
I'll go first. Thanks. So first off, great progress. I mean, when you look at the whole, high school has definitely been improving a lot over the past few years, and I think a lot of your credit too. So thank you for all the work you've been putting into this, and the results clearly show that. So thank you. Also, thank you for doing the deep dive on the self-efficacy and everything. And I don't know, when I was looking at your slides, so thanks for adding that, it seems like maybe the students are like lacking just self-confidence, maybe? Is it too simplistic to think that, with those results?
That's something that varies so much student to student. But I think like to say I'm very sure I'll remember everything, like a student might feel like they have to walk that walk then, and so hedging their response in, well, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
It's also like such an intangible question that perhaps that impacts like how confidently students answer it.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's lacking confidence in their day-to-day, how they conduct themselves or interact in classes, but I definitely feel like that word is relevant in the survey response.
Okay, thanks. And then my other question is, you were showing a lot of the MCAS data. MCAS has now changed where it doesn't count anymore. Do you feel that you're going to get the same level of commitment from the students? Because I've kind of heard that in these meetings that some like 10th grade, the students would really, really focus because it was a graduation requirement. But now that's not a graduation requirement anymore. So don't know if you thought about that or, what the reaction would be if scores do drop down a little bit, right?
Yep. Well, we'll find out soon.
Okay.
I would predict that MCAS scores will remain consistent or go up. Our students work really hard and take a lot of pride in what they do. The scores do still count, especially for school accountability ratings.
Yep.
We look at the results by teacher and by classroom. The students still qualify for a couple of different scholarships. And when we had our MCAS training assembly, we really leaned, maybe even extra, into to meet the competency determination or the graduation part of MCAS is really not the point, the full point of MCAS. It's really an opportunity to show how much you've learned, show what a great job your school's doing, and students seem to buy into that. And so we haven't seen people blowing off the test, people closing their lid after 10 minutes. So I'm cautiously optimistic that our students will continue to do a great job.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
But I understand the question.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think everyone's going to be, we'll see this year, right?
So first of all, thank you very much, and I really appreciate the updated slides on the self-efficacy and on the attendance piece. And I certainly, that helps show the improvement from one year to the next. There's two things about attendance. One, in terms of your goals for next year, we're still at the point where it's a decent percentage overall, 80 students in that 10-plus range out of 650, 700 students. It's still a fairly high percentage, and we know if they're not here, they're not learning. And it's such an indicator of so many other things that having that as something I know you guys are working hard on, but keeping it still as a point of focus, I think is an important thing for the students and for the overall well-being of the school. I do wonder, and I don't know if there's a way to trace this or track this compared to prior years, because it may be difficult to get to the data. Is there an uptick among 5-day absences where it's clear that parents are pulling kids for vacations outside of our holiday schedule and outside of our vacation schedule? Because I feel like there's anecdotal evidence of parents being more comfortable since COVID of taking their kids for a week to Disney in April or May or in October or random times in the year. And so if there is anecdotal evidence of that, I'd be really curious how we can reach out to parents and drive home the point that we do have vacations and holidays, and we do have times that I know it's more expensive, and I know these things, but other than something truly exceptional, pulling your child out for 5 days is a detriment to the child and their learning. And I think, I have a concern that happens more now than it used to. And if that's something we could manage, that alone, if there was 10 or 20 families doing that every year, that alone would change the numbers in a marked way. And so I'm really curious if that data exists or if it would be possible. I don't know if that would be something worth taking the time to look into, but it feels like there's an opportunity there. And then the last thing on self-efficacy, the part I really worry about, and I take your point, and the data you put there really does help, and the way that data comes along, but the concern I have, the thing that creeps in the back of my head is, even if we're at 85% on all those markers, if it's the same 15% on all 5 of them, then we have a group of kids that we really do have a concern with. So in some ways, it depends on where the scores, I know you're not gonna have that level of data because of the way the survey works, but if there are kids where this topic is a real challenge for them, then it becomes, how do we help them? How do we focus on them? How do we access other resources in the district to really help them to be confident in their learning? Because it's clear from the other scores, they are learning. Mm-hmm. All the things you pointed to on the other slides say they are good students, they are learning well, and they should feel self-confident and comfortable with their learning. And so connecting their results to their emotional state about it, I think, is important to help them then be more comfortable accessing even further. So I really think there's a lot of good work to be done there, and I appreciate the extra data and the extra knowledge.
Do you mind if I respond to that?
Do.
Just because when if you look at sense of belonging in the current school improvement plan, that's the one that most directly connected to Standard 5 in the strategic plan. And so our school counselors, we produced the list of the 15% or so of students who responded the lowest, so that we could have targeted intervention to introduce them to activities, to identify what are their barriers to connecting, to try to close that gap. So I think there's like some pretty similar existing interventions and structures in place. And I would say that it's not unique to self-efficacy, like we see in social awareness, there's 23%. We see in emotional regulation, there's 34%. So there's definitely room for growth, and our support staff is underway in trying to intervene in those ways. And we'll continue to focus especially on self-efficacy.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, can I go?
Please.
So I don't have much more to add, but thank you. This is awesome. It's just so great. And I was looking through the slides prior, and I was just like, appreciate the data. It was sort of like a high-level look at this, but I think it really speaks to the committee members and sort of like understanding what you're thinking. And just anecdotally, what I'll say about Ryan Gendron is, when I make a comment about anything, he's always 5 steps ahead of me. He's like, yes, that's what we're working on next year. Stamina, academic, and I'm like, of course you are. Like, so I am just, so this idea like that you're looking at this, I already knew you were gonna be like, yep, that's our next, that's what we're looking at, that's what we're doing. We already have it detailed. So I just really appreciate how forward thinking you are about what's coming next. And he trips me up. I'm like, I don't even have anything else to say to you. Like, it's really unbelievable how you just have such a clear sense of this building. And I feel like fortunate because I'm in it, so I can kind of see it in a different way, although I guess quite a few of us are in it. But I get to see sort of the real feeling of belonging that children have when they're here. And I get to sort of hear not just from my own child, but others who talk about their feelings at the high school. And I'm so appreciative for you and your staff and the faculty for all you've done. Thank you for this. The one thing I will say is this piece of self-efficacy, the one word that comes to mind is relevance. And I know we've talked a little bit about this before in terms of like our kids, all kids seeing the relevance, not just to get the A, but why am I doing this? And I always feel like that's such an area that you're constantly thinking about. How do we make this feel relevant to kids? Are we as relevant as we could be, as we need to be? And so I'm just excited to see what comes up next time. But thank you for this. We appreciate it.
I appreciate the feedback, but I have to deflect a lot of it to our team. Like, we have
Sure,
so
I
many, so many great people, like, contributing and feeding ideas and brainstorming, and like, the energy, the ripples have really, I think, contributed to why you're seeing such wide success. And I'm fortunate to sometimes be the spokesperson on their behalf, but, you know, they're in the classrooms working with the kids, they're in the office helping kids through hard times, so it really is a testament to the whole team here.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Other side of the table?
I co-sign what's been said.
Well, this is unusual.
Gendron, great job. Thank you as always. We appreciate you being here.
All right, thank you all.
Thanks, Ren.
Thank you.
All right, continuing with our trend of taking things slightly out of order, I'd like to invite our friends from the MASC to come down and join us. We have Executive Director Glenn Kuchar and Field Director Alicia Mallon joining us. Thank you for being here. We appreciate your patience.
We kind of put this in between the superintendent's report, just to get people out of here. Sure. I do apologize for the timing. I know you're probably very used to this, but
We know how these meetings run.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It's for us.
Mostly for the
Okay.
TV recording, so they'll pick you up.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. We're happy to respond to any of your questions that you may have about the process, how it's done, what's involved. I provided for all of you a decision tree, sort of an explanation of the step-by-step of a search. I also have something that you probably haven't seen, and that is a more detailed description of what tasks are involved in searching. MASC assists anywhere between 15 and 25 school districts every given year, sometimes as a search consultant, sometimes as a technical consultant, sometimes just as an advisor. So we're involved in a lot of this activity. It's a very important decision, so you may want to take your time in exercising how you go about it. I'll say this, the school committee has enormous flexibility. You could, if you wished, appoint Alicia as your superintendent to start a year from July. That's how much discretion you have. You can do a search, you cannot do a search. You can do the search yourself with technical assistance from us, which is a no-fee service. We can provide you with lots of support if the district has some staff that are able to handle some of the stuff here. We also have a full search service, which means from soup to nuts, we will provide you with an extensive array of services, including recruiting of candidates, preparation of a search committee, development of questions for the interviews, assisting with the reference checking, vetting the candidates, and advising you in communicating with your community, including conducting focus groups and doing surveys. This year, Alicia's been involved in several searches. I've been involved in several searches. We've done a lot of them, and I think it might be helpful if you had questions for us. We would be happy to respond to you. The details that we provided, including the sample search proposal and the decision tree, these are public documents. They're ours. We created them, but they're not copyrighted. So you can share them with your friends and neighbors. Street value is whatever it is. If you were to retain us to do your search in any way, Alicia is the field director. I would be backing her up. these things are split, where a lot of our staff cover for each other. But what does distinguish us is that we're present at every phase of your search. Not because you need to be watched, but because people want to be able to know that if we have a question, there's somebody we can ask. Something comes up, things go sideways, how do you straighten it out? There's somebody you could ask. Always on site during the search process, always accessible by email, texting, telephone calls, whatever it might be.
Thank you. Please, yeah.
So just to frame this, sorry, I probably should frame this a bit, but so just to frame this for the community, we are going to embark on a permanent superintendent search for not next year, but the following year. July 1, 2026 would be the start date of a permanent superintendent. We have just completed an interim superintendent. I know you all know this, but I'm telling others, search, and that interim will be starting July 1, 2025. We are looking now to sort of have a couple of different search firms come in and talk to us so that we as a committee can decide on which firm is best supporting the work that we need. So this is the first of 3. We'll have 2 at our next meeting. And then hopefully either that evening or at least our meeting in June, we will then vote and decide on which firm we would like to go with. So MASC is our first visitor. And as you've all seen, the documents that they shared. So feel free, if there's any specific questions related to that. I'll start with just the candidate profile and what that might look like. So I think just in sort of our conversations about what our full search, our permanent search would look like would be very different than our interim, although we did also use a firm to help us to support the interim. But we're definitely looking to bring in the community, which is what we had done with Dr. Brand's search, and have a candidate profile emerge, which would then be sort of really publicized, and this is what Wilmington is looking for as we move into this next phase. What kind of support do you provide to help us develop that? And so obviously some of that would come from the focus groups and the surveys. Do you actually develop that profile, or does that fall back to us?
So no, we definitely develop that profile. So one of the things that happens at the very beginning is we have a conversation with you about what it is the school committee is looking for, and then we start reaching out to stakeholders. We have not only would we take your stakeholder feedback and your feedback, but we also have a form that we would have you fill out. And once we've gathered all of that feedback, we have in our office, we have very talented staff members who put together what we call the brochure, which is what you're looking for, some specifics about your district, some of the demographics, how many buildings you have, et cetera. And then that becomes part of your application postings that go across the country. And we have a lot of connections with MASS, with other search firms. And I do want to say, even if you don't choose us as a search firm, we are still your member organization, and I am still available to you as your field director for questions along the way. So if there are other questions that come up, we are absolutely available for that. But we do help you with the development of your documentation, your search brochure. We host if you're doing a full search with us, we host the application. We collect the applications, we return them to the search committee. We work with the search committee to develop their questions for the candidates based on the feedback from your stakeholder survey that we had to begin with. And then when you move to the final phase, the public phase, we also help you develop those questions for the public interview based on the original profile of the district, the original stakeholder feedback, what we got through the search committee feedback, and then public feedback from you as well.
Thank you, that's very helpful.
Dr. McCall.
Yep, thanks for coming by. Kind of one question I have right now is, can you describe to me how you go about actively recruiting candidates? Because like all the back end stuff looks great, very logistics, but if we don't get the right candidate flow, that would kind of sink us,
There are several elements that go into recruiting.
Yeah.
We are contacted on a regular basis by people who are going to, you go to the website of the State School Boards Association and the Superintendent's Association, and that's where you find out where all the vacancies in the country are. Because we post everything in Massachusetts. The superintendents post everything. They get 1 million hits.
Yeah.
We get about 85,000 hits because we only work to find superintendents. We'll post everybody's vacancy, but we only do superintendents. There are others who will do principals, assistant superintendents, special education directors. They would get more hits for that reason. But we have a website that is accessed nationally. We have access to the state school boards associations in all the states. We are part of the National Affiliation of Superintendent Searchers, who are the State School Board Association Superintendent Searchers. We are in touch with each other for vetting out-of-state candidates and getting that information. We also have an extensive list of people who want to be superintendents, people who train superintendents, colleges where people go to get the credentials to be superintendents. We are part of the Aspiring Superintendents Program with the Superintendents Association, and we have a list of about 20 organizations separate from graduate schools that represent different constituencies who have superintendents from diverse constituencies that are there. We also work with the Department of Education's Influence 100 program, which is a program that trains and mentors minority candidates to be superintendents. And we know people, and people have been calling us. People call us constantly saying what's out there. So we know who's looking. We know who we think are better fits for some places, but we refer people to the process that we have. Now, if you elect to use a search consultant who's not us and somebody calls us, we refer them to the district, because that's going to, everybody's searches eventually in some way generate calls to us, which we direct to whoever you have. And all of our resources that I've described to you are available to our member districts. So our recruiting list, the list of organizations, the different, the people who have been looking for superintendencies, our guide to contracting, our question compendia that we have with samples of questions that are asked. Those are all available as members to you, not to your search consultant, but to you. So if you want that in any way during the process, we'll be very happy to share all of that with you. None of it's copyrighted. It's all original work that we created, but we're not allowed to copyright because we're largely funded with public money that you pay us, so everything we have is free, which doesn't mean that sometimes it doesn't get repackaged and gets sold to people by somebody else. It's been an issue from time to time.
Just follow up?
Yeah, please.
Quick. So thank you. That was a really good overview. It seemed like it's a lot of kind of like passive recruiting where it's like we have all these databases, we can screen them, people come to us. Do you do like active recruiting, like finding people that you may know that might fit our candidate profile and call them up or send them an email and be like, hey, this district we think, I know you're not looking right now, but good opportunity came up, would you be interested in chatting?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If we're looking at your district and we think we know of a couple people who we know we've seen come through searches before, we'll say, hey, have you thought of applying to Wilmington?
Okay.
Conversely, we also get people that call us and say, hey, I just saw that Wilmington opened. What do you think about my application? And we can give them a little bit of feedback on what it is you're actually looking for as part of what we got from your stakeholders. So yes, that is a conversation that is happening all the time.
Great.
We have a very close working relationship with our counterparts in the Northeast. And a lot of the candidates that we get from, most of the out-of-state candidates come from other states in the Northeast that are driving distance from Boston. Depending upon where you put your vacancy notices, we do get a number of applications from out of state in different parts of the country. I will tell you, occasionally those people get hired, and usually they don't stay very long. Unless they have a link to Massachusetts. Sometimes people want to come back to Massachusetts. And occasionally, and you're going to want to watch out for this, you're going to get an application and we might get a call from somebody from, I'm the superintendent in Muncie, Indiana, and I'm retiring, and Oh, we always wanted to come to the Cape, so we're thinking I could go to Wilmington, punch in for 3 years, and then retire again. How hard could it be? These people really do this. So there are out-of-state candidates. Some of them are very serious, some of them are very good, and we have access to our colleagues who also help us find good people. I should also say that if we are a search consultant for you, we don't get paid until you have a superintendent signing a contract. So if the search doesn't work, we have to start over, we start over. If the superintendent doesn't stay for 2 years, we do it over. Free. If you're doing an interim consultancy for anything like that, we provide technical assistance without fee for districts that manage their own searches, and we do interim searches without fee either.
Mr. Axel, and then Mr. Turner.
So I have two questions initially. I'll just jump in with the first. Can you talk a little bit about what you see as the most advantageous timeline in terms of when the process should begin, in terms of also having the biggest candidate pool, having enough time to do this search properly without it extending all year? What would be your kind of ideal recommendation for both the duration and kind of when to begin and hopefully end?
So we have a sample timeline we can send you, but honestly, you are in the best time frame right now because you know you're going to be doing the search next year. So next school year? So what we would do is we would come out in the fall, we would start doing your stakeholder surveys, we would start getting feedback from you. I have seen many searches start their screening committee meetings late September, early October, and wrap by the end of December. You can go into January. It usually takes somewhere like 2 to 3 months for the entire process is sort of the sweet spot to give us enough time. We can do a truncated search, we can do an elongated search, but usually that 2 to 3 months is sort of the sweet spot to get, to do it without feeling like you're crushing everything into, the weeks before Thanksgiving. So.
This document has the ideal timeline, which starts in September.
You gotta show them the front.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's on the next to the last
printed
page.
Yeah, it printed funny.
It's in the decision tree one, yeah.
We also have a list of key responsibilities that you may think are important for your superintendent and sample selection criteria, talents that you'll be looking for in your next superintendent. In this.
Did you have a second?
Sure. I'll just, my second question is just about what your sense is of, mostly right now, but also maybe saying in the past year, of just how superintendent searches have been going. Like, what have been the challenges that districts have been facing? Are they generally getting enough qualified candidates that they're happy with? Have they been kind of struggling sometimes with the process? And as far as the candidates go, are people shifting around a lot, or is there kind of people staying in place?
I would say we're not seeing a lot of movement right now like we did shortly after COVID. After COVID, it felt like there was a year where we were doing, it was when I first came on to MASC, and we were doing so many searches when I first came on. I think everything's sort of starting to settle. Most districts, depending on their size, a smaller district usually gets between like 8 to 12 candidates, applicants for the first round, and then they narrow that down and they bring in their finalists, usually 3 to 4 finalists. Larger districts will sometimes see 20, 30, 40, but I think the pools they're good. And what we're mostly looking for here is, not someone who has all of the degrees. We're looking for someone who works for Wilmington. I have said to many a search committee, we're sort of like matchmakers. We're not looking for someone who checks someone else's boxes. We're looking for someone who checks your boxes. So part of what we do in the beginning is really sort of flesh out what it is you're looking for so that we can find the best match for you. I would say in a district of this size, probably with a fall search, we're probably looking at approximately 20 applicants, and then we would narrow that down.
When a vacancy draws the interest of a superintendent candidate, that superintendent candidate, particularly if they're out of state, but even if they're in a part of Massachusetts where they may not know you well, they're going to call my counterpart at the Superintendent's Association, Mary Burke or Tom Scott, and they're going to ask, why is there a vacancy? Okay, well, you're in a good position here. Your superintendent is moving on, but he's not being thrown out. No, this is important. There are some districts that have, we've got some communities that like every 3 years they get sick of somebody and they fire good people for no, you know. Why is the superintendent leaving? Superintendent is leaving on his own, and the vacancy is very honorably opened. Number two, what's the board like? You know, they'll probably watch you on cable television and get an idea of what board meetings are like. And if this is any indication, you've got a thoughtful school committee that raises issues with the community, and it's fine. Number three, most candidates will be thrilled that they don't have to sell a bond issue every year to pass the school budget, because the notion of municipalities having their own school districts is unique to New England. Otherwise, it's mostly separate independent school districts. So as difficult as budgeting is, the money's better in Massachusetts in terms of the school budget. They will ask what the labor relations are like. Most states do not have collective bargaining, but about 20 states do, and they're going to want to know what the relationship is with the faculty. Those things will determine whether candidates will take an interest in where you are. There are some communities in Massachusetts that people just don't want to go to, and it has everything to do with trouble. And you should consider yourselves fortunate. Believe me, we know what trouble is. You don't have it. It's Wilmington is a town that has a great reputation. The school district has a good reputation. The board is respected in the community. It's an ideal situation to find good candidates. And if you start looking in September, before people commit to other districts, you'll be in a position to attract the best candidates that are out there.
Mr. Turner. Two kind of detailed questions, I guess. One, in the decision tree, I was confused because the posting goes out in mid-September, the focus groups don't happen in October. When I looked at this, it looks like they're in the right order. So I was just confused that the focus groups happened after the announcement of the position. This makes a whole lot more sense in terms of order. So
That's odd. I would say, so I also don't want to confuse the posting of the position and the announcement of the vacancy. The announcement of the vacancy precedes pretty much everything else, so maybe that was a wording issue.
Okay.
The announcement of the vacancy precedes everything, and then we start gathering your information.
The other thing that you want to be mindful of, and this can be a key factor in a search, in order to have a confidential initial screening and interview, you have to have a search committee. In Massachusetts, the Attorney General does not allow the entire school committee to engage in the initial screening and interview. I will reserve my acerbic editorial comments about the Attorney General's opinion, except to say that is not what the legislature intended. The legislature intended for you to be able to engage as a full committee and use the executive session process. But you can't at this time until the law changes. So a minority of you can serve on the search committee. And I mean, our staff have different feelings about this. I don't know where Alicia is on it, but I've always taken the position that it's very helpful to have school committee members on the search committee because bad behaviors don't ensue when the school committee is observing. And sometimes we have candidates who are stalked by disgruntled former employees. I mean, I don't know how many administrators there are in the room, but if we have any principals in the room, chances are you've counseled a bad teacher out of the profession, you've suspended a kid from school, you've expelled somebody from school. Chances are the parents of those kids, or the family of that person counseled out of the profession, is Googling your name once a week to see where you're applying, so that they can call you all and say, Satan is bringing this candidate to Wilmington. Don't hire John Doe or Mary Doe because they're terrible people. So candidates really want confidentiality. But what we're finding is that despite that, there are sometimes elements inside the search committee that try to bully the other members of the search committee, which happens a lot less if the school committee is represented on the search committee and can observe that process. I'd be happy to elaborate personally with some case studies, but it's very important that the search committee is critical, because they're going to recommend finalists to the school committee. And you're trusting the search committee not to screen out good people. But sometimes members of the search committee don't want certain good people to go forward because they have other favored candidates that they're promoting, and all those kinds of factors go on. So that's why I think that argues for having school committee members observing on the search committee. For sure.
So I will also say about the timeline is that we can expand and contract certain things based on what you are looking for. There are some committees that want to interview 3 nights in a row and decide on night 4. There are committees that want to interview 2 and 2 and decide the following week. So all of those pieces, when it comes to that, we can expand and contract that for whatever your committee needs. Some committees want to do it in line with their regular meeting schedules. Some want to do it as a completely separate meeting. We can adjust that to what you all need.
Thank you. And then the second one I had was on specifically on the reference check process, which kind of touches to where you were going, but the service you provide on reference checks, how do you gather that information, then how do you package it to make it consumable? Because in an interim superintendent search process, I was one of the people doing the reference checks, and obviously you're going to get a lot of the favorite teacher or favorite parent you ever had. And so being able to be critical about the reference checks and the usefulness of them, I will say 25-year-old reference checks were a thing. And even 15-year-old ones, which can be useful, but also start to become limited utility. And so how do you manage the reference process and the service you provide? How do you then package what you gather to make something useful to all of us in the decision process?
So we always start with the references that are provided in an application, but then we also take a look at the stakeholder feedback that you gave us. And when we call those first 3, we're asking questions based on what your stakeholder feedback was. We can also, as part of the process, ask your finalists for additional references. And then, as Glenn mentioned, we have a lot of connections in a lot of places where if you would like us to reach out, or if someone reaches out to us, we can also give you that feedback. One of the other things we very often do with districts is after the finalists have had their interviews, when the finalists have their interviews, actually, they do a day in the district where they meet with a whole bunch of stakeholder groups. We also create a survey for you so that those stakeholder groups can give us that feedback, and then we take that and we summarize it for you. We don't do direct quotes because we can't always control what the sources are, but we give you a summary of the feedback from your stakeholders, and we can parse that out to staff, students, parents, community members, et cetera, and let you know how they felt about it. So it's the initial reference process, but then there's a lot of other feedback that we also put into sort of an executive summary for you.
And we have the resumes of all the candidates, so we can go back to previous employers and reach our contacts there, or reach the contacts there. Now, we have a guide to reference checking with the questions that we'll ask in seeking references. We always have to be careful, because there are those districts that want to get rid of someone and will quickly encourage you to hire someone to pass them off, and then it becomes your problem. And then there are those who genuinely will say, this person is going to be really good in Wilmington, but really not good for Mayberry. This is why we think this person is better than another. When we write up the reports, we're always mindful that these reports can have a life of their own, because sometimes they're not treated confidentially. So sometimes it's the discussion that we have with the school committee that fills in some of the gaps from what a written report would do, but we do provide reference summaries that, but we are more likely to say candidate Smith was outstanding in curriculum and development and personnel management, and leave out some things that are more discussed personally. The reason being, if we were to say the candidate is great in curriculum, great in personnel, great in leadership, not so good with budgeting, but they have a great finance person to help them. Well, the local newspaper could come up with a story that says candidate Jones can't count money, and the next thing you know, the negatives attached to the candidates through no fault of their own. No superintendent brings every skill that you want to the table. That's why what is generally the superintendent searches have determined what districts want primarily is somebody who is very smart, somebody who has a vision, somebody who knows how to hire people that can help achieve the vision, and somebody who's a good communicator. And if you're having budget trouble, somebody who can manage the finances. So that's, in fact, candidates, when they come in for interviews, they almost know what they're going to be asked, whether you tell them or not. So we ask candidates, and I would encourage you to do the same, think of anything you could possibly be asked and come up with 3 things that you did that you think reflect your achievement of that particular skill. And prepare it and be ready to have your interview.
So I would also say that we recommend at the end of our searches that if you have someone who is new to a superintendency, they have not held the seat of the superintendent before, that they do the new superintendent induction program through MASS, which is the superintendent's version of us. And again, we do work very closely with MASS on those things, but that can be a really helpful step for them. They help them create an entry plan, they get a cohort and a mentor, and that works them through the process for their first 3 years. So we do recommend that at the end of all of our searches. For any superintendent that you hire that has never been a superintendent, even if we're not the consultancy firm, we would recommend you have them do the NSIP program.
Can I ask a question about the screening committee? And just, can you walk me through, so now I've participated in 2, one permanent and one interim screening committee. And so I'm just curious to know, how do you help the committee finalize and figure out who their top candidates are? What does that look like? Is there a number? Like, I've seen it done one way, really, but I'm curious to know if there are other ways, and what does that conversation look like in the space? How do you do that?
So generally what we're going to be looking for from you is what stakeholders you want to include in your screening committee. And then we figure out sort of the balance of how many staff members, did you get a staff member from every level? Do you have parents on there? Are they sort of a cross-section of how many parents you have, how many grade levels you have in the district? We would want to see a community representative, maybe one of your town government, FinCom, Select Board, something like that. We have lists that we sort of start with every district. This is sort of where we want to start. We would then help you through the application process for the screening committee, and we would help you piece together a screening committee, and then we orient them, so we teach them all about open meeting law, which is thrilling for everyone. We go through an ethics update with them, just so they understand what executive session is, and we orient them so that they understand what the process is. We help them through their question development, and then we're with them while they decide on how many semifinalists they want to bring in. We're with them when they bring in the semifinalists and ask them questions. We're with the screening committee the entire way until they decide the public candidates.
With regard to an actual process, when the search committee meets, they will have received all of the applications that have come in.
Mm-hmm.
We record them electronically, we put them in a cloud that's only accessible to the search committee, so they can check everything out. We will often provide them with a matrix that has the key criteria that they're looking for in their candidate, so that they can use it just for their own personal scoring purposes. Then when it comes time to meet, to select the candidates to interview, one of the things that I like to do is to say before, okay, welcome, everybody's seated. Before anybody says anything, let's take a straw poll. Okay, that prevents you, the bully, from explaining before this starts that I think candidate 6 and candidate 8 are not appropriate. Or somebody bangs the table and says, candidate 2, if candidate 2 is even interviewed, my union will take a vote of no confidence. You want to preclude all of that by giving everybody an opportunity to make an unbiased, cold announcement of who they think they'd like to see. And, the individual can be foolish, but the species is wise. The collectiveness of the group almost always reaches a sensible pecking order of who goes where, and then they can discuss the candidates based on their preferences and what they think is best, and they select what they have. Now, that process can happen quickly, or it can take forever. As my staff knows, the most challenging part of the process is developing the questions for the candidates, because that involves group editing, which is a crime against humanity. So we try to figure out a way for the search committee to sort of work on their questions and have a couple of people serving as like the lead editors so that they can coordinate it, so that you don't spend 6 hours parsing the sentences on your questions. And after you've interviewed the candidates and you need to find finalists, we recommend taking another straw poll, just to see where everybody is and trying to narrow the field down. And since it's executive session, when we call the candidates to be interviewed, we simply say, are you available on these dates? Or, I'm not going to make your day, but you're not going to go forward. We don't provide explanations, we only report, because it's confidential. That's where the consultants earn their money, by being there for the interviews, observing and guiding the people on the process through it, so that they can move effectively and get the best people.
And I like group editing. Glenn hates it, but I like the question development process myself. He hates it. I love it. I do think that that's where we really drill down on what your district is looking for. So that is one of the things that the field directors do a lot of work with the search committees, with the screening committees on, and the field directors talk to each other too about, what they've recently seen as questions. We share questions. We will steal them from you after the fact and add them to our compilation, and then use them with other districts too. If you have a good question, we always steal it.
Tracy. So one of the items in the decision tree that you provided for us, there was a list of factors that may cause people to apply or not apply to the position. We already talked about a little bit of this, because you talked about stable leadership and whether the district has trouble in school committee leadership. One of the factors that you listed was presence of an internal candidate. And we may well have an internal candidate if our interim superintendent applies for the permanent position. Can you talk a little bit about how that dynamic works?
It may deter some candidates who feel like they're not, some applicants who feel like they're not as strong as other candidates may be. I will tell you, very rarely does someone say, oh, there's an internal, I'm not applying. I think most of your candidates for a superintendency know that there are potentially internal candidates in every district. They will ask us, we will tell them, and then they will decide whether or not they feel like they're strong enough. It's not, we don't ever tell someone don't apply because there's an internal. We want everyone to apply. We want you to have the widest field possible.
However, the presence of an internal candidate who is widely known, or who has announced one's intent to apply, which is never a smart thing to do, jumping the gun in that regard. But sometimes when they're out there, no one wants to be known as the person who wasn't hired in Wilmington. So if they're competing against a strong internal candidate, that can be problematic. And that's why some districts will anticipate that and vet their internal candidates quickly and let them know whether they're being viably considered or not. All kinds of, there are no rules for this other than the open meeting law. So if you wanted to make an adaptation in the process, take it in a different direction, bring somebody back and interview them twice, you can do that. So, but as I say this partly in jest, if there's a strong internal candidate, that squirrel out there knows it. It's a school district. Everybody knows everything. It's hard to control rumors, especially in a superintendent search. And invariably, someone will start a rumor that the search is bagged for an internal candidate. And someone will start a rumor that the search is biased against any internal candidate. And then somebody's going to start a rumor that the chair has a mystery candidate from Michigan who's already been promised the job. It's a school district. They're hotbeds of rumors. It's just the way it is. So we do our best to try to control them by making sure that everybody on the search committee understands the bounds of confidentiality.
Thank you. I've got one, maybe two, if I could. Mr. Exo got one of mine. I was going to ask about the sort of internal interim. I'm curious your thoughts on sort of your approach to this. Is it more that, you're leading this search with our input, or are we leading this search with your support?
You are, honestly, you're leading the search. You're looking for your next leader. Our document is literally called Looking for a Leader for a reason. You are going to tell us what it is you're looking for. You're going to tell us who you want involved in the process. Your screening committee is going to tell us how many semifinalists. They're going to tell us how many finalists. You're going to tell us in the end what you want your questions to look like. We're here to support you through all of that and give you the feedback you need when you need it. If you wanted to ask us, well, what do you think about this particular person's resume? Do you think this is what we're looking for? That's what we're here for. We're bringing our experience to the table. We're bringing our assistance to the table, but this is your search. And in the end, like I said, we're matchmakers. You're about to sign up with a superintendent for 3 years. We want you to be happy. We want you to be a successful district. At the end of the day, every decision you make should be for your students, and that's what we're here to support you for. It's not about us. It's not even really about you. It's about the students and the good fit for the district.
In the same way that the chair is the servant of the assembly, not the master, we view ourselves as the servants of the clients, not the masters. And by the way, none of you are here because you're wallflowers. The school committee members are, by definition, outspoken sometimes and have strong opinions. And anyone who tries to control a board by telling you we've decided this is the way it's going to be when it's not the way you want it to be, quickly gets put in their place. So I would say we're mindful of respecting that who's the client and who's supporting the client.
And we have contact with you all after, whether you choose us or not. We are still your member association. I'm still your field director. When you have a new superintendent, I always say, have me come back out. We'll do an operating protocol and goal-setting workshop. We're going to still be here for you throughout, so we want to make sure that you get what you're looking for, not what we're looking for. We're never going to push someone to the front of a list because we think they're going to be your superintendent. You're looking for your superintendent. We're just here to help.
Thank you. And then following up on that, I appreciate the decision tree and the model timeline. So hypothetically, our next meeting is 2 weeks from today. We interview the other firms, we make a decision. Then that's the end of May, the very beginning of June, we've made a decision. What does that sort of between time from the beginning of June to the beginning of September look like? Is there information gathering? Could you talk to me a little bit about what that period
We can
looks like?
definitely do that. So I know school ends mid-June, but we work all year, and most administrations work all year too, and you guys don't just disappear and then like reform, and it's not Thanos snapping you out and snapping you back in. We can talk over the summer about what a lot of this process looks like. We can start gathering information that the survey we talked about, where it has all your administrators and your buildings and your population, we can start pre-forming that, and we can start to narrow down that timeline. If you have meetings over the summer, I know most committees usually skip July, but if you do one in early August, I can work with the chair. If the committee says you can work with me, then you and I can start working on some of those details so that when you come back to your first meeting in the beginning of the school year, August or September, the committee can approve the timeline and we can get moving right away. So we don't necessarily stop. We will start sending you information. We'll start weeding out, not weeding out, we'll start bringing in all of the details for your stakeholder groups. We'll talk about what you want your screening committee to look like. We can do all of that over the summer. We work year round.
Very good.
And thanks to the extension, we can work remotely with your district too if we have to. So if you wanted to get the full committee together to talk about things, we can do that too.
Very good. Dr. Bryson.
So I appreciate all of that. In terms of organization, do you keep us organized? Do I have to say, wait, I think that we have to do this now, or are you saying to me, this is next on your list? I want to make sure that there's this.
I am in this role because I am a type A person, and yes, we will keep you very organized. There's whoever is my contact. It's usually the chair or the chair of the screening committee. We are in very frequent conversation. I'm sending you, here's the agendas you need to post. This is your motion to go into executive session. Great. This is what you need. We give you all of that. Excellent. So that you're not flailing thinking, oh my God, we didn't post for an interview that's happening with an executive session after. No, we give you everything up ahead.
Fantastic. So you have your own timeline for us, which is, I love that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And my last question, there may be more, and I think if we do have more, we're more than welcome to write.
Email us anytime.
Or
Our
go through Jesse.
emails and phone numbers are on the website.
It's so complicated being on the screening committee when you are just representing 7 members, right? So say there's 2 or 3 of us serving on that committee. This is all happening during executive session, so how do the other school committee members feel as though they're involved in that space? It was different with the interim, I think, because it feels less sort of huge. You're okay, it's 1 year. I have but this is one of maybe the most important thing we do, right? And so, how do they feel as though they have access to? Do they have access? Can they have access to all the resume? So what does that look like? I know. And this is where I'm going back to what you said earlier. And I know this, but it also feels, how can we, whoever is serving in that space, how can we make sure that the committee feels as informed as they possibly could be?
So that's all the pre-work we do when we're talking about what it is you're looking for, what the composition of the screening committee is. And we do the pre-work with the whole committee. Members or member of the committee can be on the screening committee. It's sort of like any other subcommittee. You need to trust that your subcommittee is doing what they're supposed to do. You've given them a charge. You've given them all the information going forward. And then the school committee gets to rejoin when you have the finalists. And you get the resumes at that point. You get all of our reference material, all of our reference check material. You get all of our survey material at that point. So there is that little part in the middle where you sort of have to trust that the body is the decider and the subcommittee is the body at that point. You put good people on your screening committee, you trust the people that you put on, and then you wait for the other side. You're not necessarily going to have no input. What we're looking for when we get to the other side is we always recommend a minimum of 2, at least 3, some districts go for 4. So it's not as if you will have missed out on they're not going to return one name to you. They're going to return a slate to you. So you will have feedback at that point.
But there is no way around the fact that 4 members of the committee will not know who any of the candidates are or were, except for the finalists.
Right.
That's why we're trying to change the law, so that the Attorney General will not be able to interpret it in a way the legislature did not intend.
Thank you.
But that's what we're stuck with, and it's one of the sort of odd but typically Massachusetts regulation style things that won't allow a majority of the committee to be in on the confidential portions of the initial process.
Thank you.
That's a good question.
Not the answer.
Okay. I think that's it on our end. Anything, final thoughts, closing comments?
No?
Just one last thing, that there are people who may know you or may know somebody that knows you who contacts you about the process. Speak to them and say, we encourage you if you want to encourage them. Don't make any promises you can't keep, and encourage them to file an application. It's not inappropriate for somebody to call you. It may be a little awkward, but it's not inappropriate. I mean, this is, you can talk to anybody you want, but be careful that they don't interpret your conversation as any kind of a commitment. But sometimes the school committee members, sometimes the parents, sometimes the faculty reaching out to their colleagues in other districts are among the best recruiting elements. Because if the faculty respects the district, they will encourage good people in other districts to seek the superintendency. You're in a very good place.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you have any other questions, you know where to find us.
Thank you.
And again, you'll be, if we were to go with MASC, you actually will be
I would be the
field
field,
person? Okay.
I'm your field director, so I would be the primary search consultant. Sometimes we have overlaps where maybe there might be a meeting that I may not be able to go to. There are 3 other field directors, and then also Glenn, who could come out. Like, if I couldn't cover an interview one night with the full committee, we would have someone, if we had someone available, come out and do that with you. If there were any, conflicts with my schedule for like part of the day in the district, we would make sure we had someone come in for coverage. Wherever we can, we cover with the other field directors, but I would be your primary contact.
Great. Thank you. That's helpful.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience and your time.
Yes, a lot of thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
All right.
60 bucks.
What's that?
We gotta go way back.
Oh, nope. We're gonna go 8B first. All right, continuing with our trend of taking things slightly out of order, we're gonna go to 8B, recommendation for the appointment of Director of Student Support Services, Dr. Brand.
Thank you very much. I will draw your attention to the memo in the packet. Ms. Murray, come on down, please. And thank you for your patience, too. As you know, we recently wrapped up the search for the district's permanent Director of Student Support Services. And it's with great pleasure to present to the committee my recommendation for that next director, the permanent Director of Student Support Services, and that is Christine Murray, who's here before you tonight. Christine just briefly began her career in public education in 2000, not to age her, but back here, right here in Wilmington. She has held a wide variety of roles where she's, I won't list them all, but starting as a guidance counselor. She has certainly risen through the department and has a really deep sense and understanding of all of the various services and programs that the Office of Student Support Services is asked to oversee regularly. I want to bring your attention to the fact that we conducted a full search for this director. I want to thank those who served on the search committee: Becky Brown, Christine Elliott, Kathy Fuller, Maura Kilbride, Michael Walsh, Kristen Walsh, and Andrea Stern Armstrong. So the difference for this as an administrative appointment is that this falls to you as the school committee as an appointing authority for this position. There's a collection of such positions, and the individual who serves as the district's administrator of special education is one of those. And so as your superintendent, I'm making a recommendation to you this evening under Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 71, that you would hopefully support my recommendation and appoint Christine Murray as the district's next Director of Student Support Services, effective immediately.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would anybody like to make that motion? Mr. Turner?
So moved.
Second. Dr. Bryson. Questions, comments? Mr. Exon.
Quickly comment that I followed this search process carefully and watched the community videos and the interviews and so forth. From my seat, I couldn't be happier that Christine is going to serve in this role.
Thank you. Mr. Golden.
Thank you. I was just going to say, from the time that I've gotten to interact with Christine and work with Christine, I come to the same conclusion. I think we'll be in great hands.
We appreciate your patience.
Thank you.
And being here this evening. Without any further ado, all those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Congratulations.
I am honored, thank you. I appreciate this, to be appointed this position. I remain committed to the students and families in the community of Wilmington, and I look forward to working alongside of the committee to do the important work that we're doing for our students. So, thank you, I'm honored.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
so much.
Can I make it quick? I just
Yes,
want to
you
say,
can,
it is
please.
no easy feat to be an internal candidate, and so thank you for putting yourself out there, because that's hard work, and we really do appreciate all the work you've done prior, but obviously participating in such a large, full search, and then to be at this point is very exciting, and so we're thrilled and we're happy to have you sitting at this seat and to appoint you officially, so thank you and congratulations.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Christine.
Sorry that it's 9:30.
9:30.
I was like, why
Okay.
is everyone still here? No.
Coming back around to the conclusion of the superintendent's report, that would be item 6D, the MSBA project update. Dr. Brandt.
In the interest of time,
Thank you.
there's a memo. Thank you. Good night, everyone. I will not go through it, but a lot of activity that continues with the project, a huge milestone with the full building committee's unanimous approval of the preferred schematic design the middle of last month, April 15th. So we are marching forward. We are in good stead with the MSBA timelines, and things are moving along nicely. I will draw your attention to the next community forum number 7. Flyer is included in the packet on this project. Yes, community forum number 7. That is scheduled for June the 3rd at 6:00 p.m. right here in the large group instruction room. And so we continue to welcome and encourage members of the community to be involved in the process. The next real key date happens at the end of June, June the 18th, in fact, when this project is being received by the Mass School Building Authority Board, and will be the next sort of set of approvals for it, if you will. But that's a really key date and a key meeting, because the reimbursement rate for the project will be known, as we understand it, on that time period. So an awful lot of work that continues in the background. As you know, Judy O'Connell, Assistant Town Manager, has now moved into the chair role of the building committee. The project's in good hands, and a lot of collective effort that still helps move this project forward. So stay tuned for more, but again, that next forum for people interested, June 3rd. And as always, we'll record that and make that available for people to watch later. And that's it for the rather lengthy superintendent report tonight. Thank you. Not all my fault, though.
Mr. Turner?
One quick note, I know we'll have other comments about similar topics in future meetings, unfortunately, but I do want to take this moment to thank you for all of your time and effort as the chair of this particular committee. I know it's been a tremendous amount of work, perhaps a bit more than you anticipated when you signed up for it. But I think you've done a huge service to the town of Wilmington with all of your effort on this committee. So thank you very much.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Dr. McCauley?
Yep, just a question around the open houses. So thanks for
Yes.
scheduling those.
Yep.
I was wondering if you can provide a little bit more detail on how those will be conducted, and then also notice that they're during school hours, which I
Yep.
think is great for members of the community. They can see the school in action.
Right.
Will there be other future opportunities, for open houses in evenings and weekends for members of the community that cannot make it?
So, thank you for the question. So we have, I've asked the members of the central office team and wider other administrators to be available should we need them based upon interest. People have been asked, because it's through the school day, to indicate RSVP essentially.
Yep.
So the intention will be to have those in very small groups, as you might imagine, escorted through the school. So we'll manage it that way. And I'm not concerned about that because of the personnel that we'll have on hand. Right now, the interest is not terribly large. We'll put another push out, though, and an invitation to members of the community if they're interested. In terms of other opportunities, nothing else has been scheduled right now. But I think that there could be, what becomes difficult, though, is in the summer, the buildings literally get sort of torn apart in terms of cleaning. And we've got CARES programs, in the north. So I wouldn't want to promise that there would be another opportunity necessarily, but certainly something that can be further considered. And I can talk to David Thompson as well around what that might look like, so.
Actually, one follow-up point to that point. When we were doing the Town Hall School Administration project, Mr. Hooper at the time did a video of Town Hall, did a video of the Roman House. I think that was a pretty useful tool as well and accessible to a wide range of hours. Having that type of, maybe a 5-minute video of ideally all 3 schools, but certainly Woburn Street and North, where the way he presented that and highlighted all the different aspects of the buildings and the constraints on them was, I thought, really very useful.
Yeah,
So
that
maybe
is
that
good.
might be a way to bridge the gap and also get a much wider audience.
I almost forgot about that video. There's a video of the Wildwood, yeah, there's a video of the Wildwood, yeah, so that is something that we could consider, but thank you for the thought.
Dr. Bryson?
Just a quick thank you to Pause for hosting, I'm sorry if that was already said, I'm a little loopy, but the community event on May 7th, so just a huge thank you to them for organizing that, that's all.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Brand. Moving along, item number 7, public comment. Hearing none. Item 8C, administrative search updates.
Not a lot of activity related to searches. The memo outlines the 3, I'll call them active searches right now that we do have ongoing. The Assistant Superintendent of Administration and Finance, we've reposted or recast, if you will, and so that provides the details there for you. And the note around the modification to try and be flexible relative to the certification and the potential candidate pool that we're hoping we can expand. Paul's position was, as I pointed in the memo, previously director. Just a little over 7 years ago, the then school committee decided to change that title to Assistant Superintendent of Administration and Finance. I know very well, as I'm sure many of you do, you could look around a dozen districts and find both of these titles in similar roles, but this is really an effort to try and cast a wider net. Where we land with the title, it's not so much the title, of course, it's the person and their responsibility, what they bring to the role, but we're hopeful that this will be an adjustment that will be positive. You can see the timeline that's been established. Andrea Stern-Armstrong will lead this search as she does most of our searches. So that's the first one. The Wilmington Middle School Assistant Principal has also been recast or reopened. We were unfortunately not able to wrap that up. We're on course to think we had a pretty strong candidate, but that changed direction, and so we're going back out for that. But that's okay. I will tell you that we have an even a larger applicant pool this time around than the first time, which is great. So you can see the timeline associated with that. Andrea is also going to lead that search. And then finally, a coordinator of behavioral health. So with your appointment of Christine Murray this evening, that vacates her position. Aaron Dunham is in an internal role, or an interim role, sorry, in that position, but as we have been consistent with this, we're reposting this, and you can see the timeline there. Christine Murray will step up to lead that search. So a lot of activity, but we're really confident with the timelines we have, this is not just about trying to fit all these in before my departure from the district. This is a measured timeline that we think is appropriate and reasonable, and equally important, trying to have these folks into place because we know that they have to give notice for their districts too. So we want to make sure that we're in a good position for that. So happy to take questions if you have any.
Question?
Do we have a school committee member on the finance search committee?
Yeah.
It was Dr. McCaldy.
Great.
You're staying.
So still?
Still.
Okay, great, perfect, that's all.
Yep.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Sure.
All right. Thank you very much.
And adding on to that, not to steal your thunder, Dr. Brand, late breaking news, the committee met in executive session earlier today to discuss approval of a contract with interim superintendent, Dr. David Thompson. And so we need to vote on that here in public session. So I would look for a motion to approve Dr. Thompson's contract.
So moved.
Second. Any discussion on that?
Thank you very much to those who negotiated the contract.
It was our pleasure. We look forward to having him here. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
One question on the prior topic.
Please.
If we were not to have the candidates we would so desire for any of these positions in that time frame that's now laid out, would we then move to interims for any of them? What would be the next step? 'Cause I know two of them, we had candidates that didn't work out.
Right.
So if we happen to the same sort of conclusion, is based on timing, is it logical to move to interims, particularly maybe more with the middle school principal assistant, because we have a little bit more flexibility with Paul, the finance role could, third time's a charm.
Yeah, good question, and my thought in this moment to that would be probably, yes. It would be, in my opinion, too late, it'd just be too late for lots of reasons to move forward with a permanent search, so that would be the direction that I would suggest we would probably go.
Okay.
Paul's position may be a little bit different because of that situation, but the other two definitely.
Okay.
Yeah. And I just would say one final, and Dr. Bryson, you made the comment earlier, and I appreciate that. It is tough to be an internal candidate putting your foot forward in these searches, and I know that, but as I've said to anyone who's in those roles, it's my thought that the right candidate will always emerge and surface to the top. And I think that we owe it to, the staff or the community at large to go through that process. And it's hard. I've never been in that position, but I can imagine it's very difficult. But, sometimes we land there with a promotion of an internal candidate. Sometimes that doesn't happen, but that's based upon what I think my responsibility is, and that's ultimately selecting the best candidate at that moment in time. So I appreciated your comment, and that's how it worked out for that one.
Dr. Bryson.
I have two comments on that. I wasn't actually going to comment on that, but I will say I think, when I look back on this time that you've been with us, I think that you have really done a wonderful job creating some real sort of like structure around searches. And I think that we will continue to do that because of your leadership in that area. And so having these sorts of things happening and having these full-on searches, but then having an internal candidate get that, it feels like we know we've done this process well from beginning to end. And the fact that Ms. Murray comes to be the one chosen is just a testament to her strength. And I think that's wonderful for her to know as an internal candidate, and so important for the community to know. And we give you the credit, I think, for really pulling that, and then obviously Andrea's work and sort of all those pieces. But as the leader of the district, not once have you ever said, I think so-and-so would be great in this position. And I think it's important for all of us to know that is not always the way things happen in districts. And so the fact that we have a very clear search protocol and we follow that no matter what position it is important, and something that I know we will continue to do after you depart and leave us. No, I'm kidding. Okay. And then my next question or comment was, can we possibly shift and move the protocols to our next meeting, just because our newest member isn't here tonight? And I think that would be a really good conversation for us to have as a full committee, if possible, but then to just move to that next piece. We don't want to not do Stephen Turner's excellent presentation. But I do think it would be helpful to shift on the protocols until Becky is with us, if everyone agrees.
No objection.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
As long as the committee has no objection, so, yeah. Mr. Ragsdale, you had your hand up.
I just wanted to also comment in that after Dr. Thompson signs his contract, it will be posted to our website. As all of our collective bargaining agreements are, and the superintendent's contract is traditionally.
And we anticipate him spending some time in the district on Friday, and he will
Yes.
sign his contract then, so that will be posted shortly thereafter. Yes, thank you.
And then we all need to sign it as well.
We'll all need to sign it as well. Correct.
So stop by the Roman house.
So stop by the Roman house. Okay, so that's administrative searches. We are going to postpone protocols until the 5/28 meeting, when we are all sort of back together, which brings us to the last item of new business, a proposal on school committee subcommittee composition. Mr. Turner.
Do you want me to put the slides, or Or do we all just have them in the packet? I can just walk through them, okay. Okay, cool. Well, I didn't want to make sure I need to do the clicker or not. So there's three things that this is really meant to do, and it's meant to do them kind of holistically and look at everything. One is a reorganization of our school subcommittees. One is a new method of planning and organizing the work of the subcommittees. And then the third thing is to try and use and leverage being a little bit more efficient with our time to strengthen our connection to our schools. So right now, we're rather stretched thin. Even our newest member from last year recognizes how much work our subcommittees are. And by being so stretched, it is difficult to accomplish what we want to accomplish with those different committees. We also do work in isolation. There's times where we don't know necessarily what that subcommittee's priorities are for the year, or how and when they're going to accomplish them. And then we also have scheduling conflicts that come from planning all of them independently. And we have seen in the last year, including with the interim superintendent site visits, and with some of our other engagement with the schools and some of the Read for America type things, the value of the connection to the schools, and how we might be able to use some different thinking to enhance our connection to the schools. So the current status, we currently have 12 subcommittees plus other things with 30 different slots, so we're all on at least 4 different subcommittees. And then we also have the negotiating teams. And we currently define our agendas for subcommittees and our meeting schedules completely on an ad hoc basis. So the proposal I have, and I'm on to slide 5 of this, is to reorganize down to 7 subcommittees, each with 3, no alternates. So we'd have 21. Everyone gets three subcommittees. Currently, we have the contract negotiation committees, and those would still be kind of ad hoc. And there's not a great way around that. Ideally, they'll all get sorted in the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll be in a great shape going into the fall. But even so, they would be more ad hoc. And Mr. Fenley and I are serving on the building committee for the town hall school admin building. That's wrapping up very soon, so I'm not including that in this discussion at all either. There's going to be a few more meetings, but that can be managed as it has been, I believe. And so I tried to think about how we could organize them together in logical ways, and also what the workload was amongst the current subcommittees and the work we try and accomplish. And so that's the 7 that came up, and they're kind of focused down from our priorities as well. Superintendent evaluation is one of the key reasons of the school committee, but policy with handbook, because handbook is kind of a mechanical thing for us, but it's not as heavy, and there aren't necessarily even frequent updates to our own handbook of how we interact. So I thought those things logically could go together. Budget and WEF, in part because WEF, is overlap with, should this be in the local budget or should it be through WEF? And so there's some logic to including those together. Certainly the building committee is something we will have for several years ideally. Wellness and CPAC, again, there's some overlap on those topics and talking about the whole child and what we're trying to do to support the whole child. Legislative and sick bank. Sick bank is kind of a lighter lift, but it seemed logical to put those 2 things together because one is a mechanical contractual issue, and also I thought the bandwidth would work well with those. And then the existing equity and outreach subcommittee, especially with committee-wide guidance on focus and agenda for the years, I think still has a lot of value for us as a committee. And so I on the page 6, I walked through a little bit more of those sorts of details. So page 7, leveraging a summer seminar, which I'm presuming this year, particularly with an interim superintendent, we would want to take a little bit of time to walk through what are the goals of each of these subcommittees. And then also some of the planning. And obviously there's some things that are ad hoc and some things that are outside of our control. I mean, I happen to know that WEF meets on the first Tuesday of every month, or second Tuesday, of every month. So there's some known things we can account for. But if we can be logical about saying, even in July or August, this is the schedule, we know with the budget and finance, the budget subcommittee, we need to weight it towards this end of the year. We know with the superintendent evaluation, there's a little bit before and there's a lot at the end. So how and when those committees are, we have a pretty good sense of when they would need to be. And even if the things needed to move once we'd schedule them, at least we have them on the books in advance. And we can say, okay, this thing came up with MSBA, we need to move this other meeting, but we've already got it and we're just moving it. It's not as if we're trying to schedule it in the moment. So that was the logic of the planning piece. And then the third piece is something new that we've talked about off and on, but I thought would be a really, really good way for us to really engage with the schools themselves. And so the idea would be that each of us would be paired with a school for a year. And in part, that's a really important piece because we represent the entire town. We don't want school committee members to become associated with a single school and locked into that school for 3 years, their entire term. I think there's a lot of value to having us move through them, but part of the important thing of this proposal is that it would be entirely up to the principal and the school committee member of what the appropriate engagement would be. We wouldn't say, you're gonna go to every one of these, that's, and the others. It would be what makes a good connection. And it would look different from the high school to the early ed centers. And also it would look different depending on people's availabilities. We had a prior committee member who we knew couldn't be in a school building during school day. And so if he were on the committee still, clearly he would be most appropriate for something like the high school where there's more events in the evening. And so we have to be careful of each other and take care of each other in that regard. And so part of it is, going on to the next slide, slide 9, it's not one size fits all. I think logically, based on size of school, that combining the early ed centers into a single assignment makes sense. And then we also should be thoughtful of, some of us have really good connections to the schools our kids are in today, making sure that we're not overlapping that. The whole purpose is to build new connections. Some of us didn't have children in the north side schools, didn't have children in the west side schools, so engaging with those at the elementary level, or could be potentially very far away from high school, for example. So maybe pairing that sort of pair logically, it would be one of those things where it would really be a conversational about what makes the most sense for everyone. But then, again, rotating every year to make sure we get to build better connections. I think it would give us a lot more exposure. There are times where sitting in this committee, you do feel a step further away. It would be really important in all of this, though, to make sure that whatever we did not create the appearance of stepping on the superintendent or interim superintendent. It has to be an informal connection that is not a managerial one. It's you're going to and being at the music show. You're going and being at open house, those sorts of events. And again, it would depend on what worked for your schedule and what worked for the school, and it would look different. But that type of connection. And getting the newsletter that they sent to the families, getting the newsletter that goes to the teachers. So you have that level of understanding of what's going on day to day in the building. It ideally would not be a massive new ad of time. It should be something that can be managed, and it's meant to fit in with the time that ideally we've created by reducing some of our subcommittee workload. That's a lot of me talking, and I'm going to stop now.
That was excellent. Thank you. Mr. Golden.
Thank you so much. Thank you for all the work you put into this. I want to compliment you. Actually, the pithiness of this is remarkable. You've consolidated a lot of really important ideas, I think, into just 9 slides. And at the lateness of the hour, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. But also because it's an important thing. So I actually think I love all of this. I have no notes. You know, I like the idea of having, as you referenced, having signed up for so many subcommittees. Everyone just having 3 feels like a really good idea, and I think it's really key, there's a heartfelt nature to having you're adopting a school kind of as a school committee and then rotating. Like, I'm close to Shawsheen, so like I've been there for various purposes, but like I could go over to Boutwell or whatever, right? Like that. So I really like this. I think this should be what we should do. I approve.
All right. Other questions, comments, thoughts, Dr. McCaldy?
Yeah, sure. So thanks for putting this together. It's always the hard part to put the initial ideas and everything. So thanks for doing that. I have a few questions and comments. One thing I was thinking about was, one thing that I saw in the proposal was taking the existing subcommittees and then kind of like putting them together and everything like that. I was wondering if this committee can maybe take a step back and actually review all these subcommittees to see if they're still fit for purpose, and if we still need to fund them and everything. Fund them by not financially, but like with hours. Yeah. So one example, like I've done Sick Bank for the past 2 years. That's something I feel like the chair or vice chair can handle, because it comes up maybe once or twice a year, and it's really involved in the teacher's contract, which the chair or vice chair might know a little bit more about, right? just one example. And then I think there's a whole host of things. We can critically review all those and spend a whole meeting on that. Like WEF, do we need someone at all the WEF meetings? Is that needed or not, right? So one question, comment there. And I think for the school monitoring proposal, I like the intent. A little concerned about time commitment, to be honest, right? Because the idea was to try to reduce the amount of school committee time, and then adding this, which could be substantial time too. So one thing I wanted to understand is getting the connection with the school can be, I think it's a very noble idea, it can be a good idea. What I'd like to come back to is, what is the desired outcome for having more focus on the schools? And then what is the vision for what it looks like and how it's going to inform us making policy and governance?
Yeah. So 2 things. I tried to be really thoughtful on what we did and didn't include. And most of what we've covered is included. And part of it is also some level of flexibility. Like right now, I am WEF and also on budget. And it's a once-a-month thing with WEF, and I do happen, on that particular example, to think it is a really useful connection for us to really appreciate what they're doing, and they also sometimes do have questions to us. But also, it doesn't have to be, like, within a budget group of 3 people, it could be I'm not available, and then there's a natural fallback. Sick bank, to be completely clear, I struggled a little bit with that one. It very well could be something we could drop. And the question becomes, does legislative need to say 3 or could it go back to 2? Is there something else we should do with that space? I was, to be completely clear, trying to think of a way to get from 30 divided by 7 to 21 divided by 7. There was a little bit of logic in the math. And then with regard to the connections, I think there's 2 different pieces to that. One, when we see things like the school improvement plans, and when we hear things, good, bad, and otherwise, about a school, having a member who knows the building a little bit better will help inform the conversations we do have on those topics. And so I think there's an important element of, right now as it sits, unless you've had a child in a school, it's a little bit harder to know what you don't know, and particularly things like the newsletter and things like the internal newsletter for staff and parents can give you a sense of what's going on in the school and can give you a sense of the spirit. When I went to the Woburn Street for just that one building-wide assembly they had, it was an incredible view into that school and how it operates and how it works and the spirit of the school. And similar to the interim superintendent walkthroughs, gave a really different appreciation for what's actually going on in the schools. And so there is an element of it that is a pure, for lack of a better word, emotional connection to the buildings and to the staff and to the students and all of that sometimes we step too far away from the kids. And so I feel like that's part of that, but there is a more mechanical piece to it. And I do hear your commitment piece, and I think part of it would be all of us mutually kind of talking about what are you gonna do and how are you gonna manage it to make sure it's okay in terms of workload. And so that's part of why it may only, and I say only, but it could be that I'm gonna do, and you can work with the principal and say, okay, I'm gonna do these 4 assemblies or building-wide events, be they an art, similar to an art show, a music event, or an open house, or those things, and I'm gonna do 1 building-wide assembly, and I'm gonna do this one other thing. So it could be as few as 1 every other month, something like that, plus, and maybe you meet with the principal themselves twice a year. So ideally, it should not be that you're signing up for a whole nother job. Another school committee, you're doubling the workload and all those sorts of things. If it comes to pass that we try this and we all get to the end of the year like, this was terrible. I spent way too much time and we didn't get the right benefit. Certainly, we do it for 1 year and it doesn't work, we should stop.
Yeah.
I cannot guarantee this is gonna work well. Full stop. I don't know, because we haven't. And I would be just as much at risk of trying to do too much as anyone else. And so I need to be mindful myself. For sure, it's a very good concern.
Okay, thanks.
Dr. Barrison.
I love it. too, I do have some of the same questions that Dr. McCarthy just brought up in terms of this connection piece, and do the principals, where do they stand on it, right? Because Dr. Brand had a conversation with them, do they think this is a good idea? So I just want to make sure that it definitely feels like something that isn't being done to them or to the schools, but that we'd like to be more connected. We've thrown these things around over time. This idea of meeting with principal without the super, I don't know. Like, part of me is like, I just feel like this is a great committee, and they're so thoughtful and careful about not micromanaging, but it could lead to some things that could not suddenly, you get so comfortable now, all of a sudden you're just like, oh, I just figured I'd call, or I just figured I'd walk in, and I don't really want to do that. I think we've been really good about not doing that. So there's that piece of like, I think there's something here, but I think we probably have to have a conversation with those leaders, starting with kind of Glenn, talking through that with them.
So on that point, I wonder if maybe sort of the consensus is we're on the right track, but maybe Stephen, maybe you and I can talk to Glenn and sort of get some thoughts from you, from the building leaders, and sort of bless you, develop this out a little bit more, bring it back for the next one.
Yeah, makes sense.
Love it.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead.
Go ahead, it was just funny, go ahead.
I think that, to me, these are really two completely separate things. I like both of these ideas, but I think that the school connection assigned to the schools, to me, has nothing to do with subcommittees. But I like the idea on its own merits. I do share some of the concerns that Jen and Mike have brought up about exactly how that looks in the time, and making sure that we're not suddenly kind of foisting more work onto the principals that maybe is not ultimately in their best interest and the kids. But I like the idea a lot, and would like to kind of see us explore that more.
Sure.
I also do like the general idea about about being more thoughtful and organized and planning more for our subcommittee work. I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, that I think it's worthwhile, like, every summer, if we, do some kind of summer meeting, to really just think about, like, what does it look like for the upcoming year? What work do we think needs to be done by our subcommittees? What subcommittees does it make sense to have? Like, do we, again, as we said, are they fit for purpose? What is the right number of subcommittees that we've, for us to be working with here? I think that, I appreciate the idea of trying to just kind of like, sort of just simplify, and just like everything is 3 members, everyone has 3 committees, and it kind of fills all the pieces. Of course, we've expanded some of the review, the permit of the purview is what I'm trying to say, of some of the meetings here, of some of the committees. One thing that I did think about, though, is that places where we have only a single representative, kind of a liaison, I was kind of thinking this through, just like, that might be nice to have it as a committee of people who can serve that role. Because, for example, I am the CPAC representative, and I cannot get to every CPAC meeting. And that is just because there are conflicts, and I have to get to, there are other meetings that are a higher priority, whether it's a school committee or building committee, and so forth. And it would be nice to have a rotating group of people who could talk about, like, can you cover this CPAC meeting? Can you cover this meeting? The main role that we have there is to kind of just give a short update on anything, special education related during that's been happening at the school committee level. And then, of course, to actually just attend their meetings and bring that information as needed back. So I think, like the idea that that's one way to kind of expand some of the capacity for those types of liaison meetings, especially when they have conflicts in other places. I think one thing that we do need to kind of still look down and think about these is, and this is part of the planning, is how much work and how much time do these committees actually take? And of course, part of that is that on some level they take what we decide to take with them. But something like the superintendent evaluation committee, which is like 1 or 2 meetings for a couple of hours, is different from the policy committee, which is ideally meeting on the regular. do we still have a handbook subcommittee? Is that committee?
It still exists. And
I don't even know who's on that committee. I might be on it, I don't know.
It was evaluated by council, and that's where it stood last, with MJ.
I guess that I would say that I think that, I'm not sure we've quite landed on the exact right formulation of kind of like the committees here, but I think this is absolutely the right idea and the right direction to move in which we really are kind of like thinking at the beginning of the year, what do we intend these subcommittees to do? How much time do we think they'll take? Let's try to kind of like schedule out their work on a regular basis so that we're not just constantly throwing together meetings ad hoc and just realizing, whoa, we haven't had a insert title of subcommittee meeting here for a long time. We should probably try and schedule something and then figure out what it is that we're supposed to actually be doing at the meeting.
yeah, that was,
All right, so we'll connect.
yeah,
Work through some of this.
for sure.
And bring it back for the next one.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for that, Mr. Turner. That was great. Moving us along to old business, school committee reorganization. So you'll recall that it is that time where we vote on leadership positions for the upcoming school year. I think at this time, I would look for nominations for chair. Mr. Turner.
I move that Mr. Jesse Fenley nominated for school committee chair for the upcoming year.
Thank you, Mr. Turner. Is there a second?
Nominations don't need to be seconded for.
Yeah, I actually had just a comment.
Okay.
Well,
We did have seconds in them last time, but okay. So
well, I'll second it, but I just wanted to say
Policy committee, we need to clean up.
that
fair.
I do feel as though things are moving really well this year, and so thank you for your leadership and for keeping us so organized. I think that people feel like we're in pretty good shape, and if you're comfortable serving in that role again, then I think that I would be comfortable having you serve in that role again.
Thank you. I would be comfortable serving in the role again.
You accept the nomination?
I accept the nomination. Are there other nominations for chair? Hearing none, it is a roll call. Dr. Bryson?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. McCaldy?
Yes.
Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Ragsdale?
Yes.
And I will vote for myself, yes. That is it's unanimous. Thank you. It has been a pleasure. I look forward to continuing the work. Nominations for vice chair. I'll nominate Dr. Bryson.
I'll second it, because we don't need that, but I'll second it.
Will you accept the nomination?
Are you going to say something nice about me?
It's been amazing to work with. I wouldn't have nominated you if you weren't incredible. What Dr. Bryson fails to mention is that while I might be the chair, I have been successful in this role only because of her help and guidance. So, absolutely. It has been a pleasure. You are an incredible asset, and I think, to your point, things are working well, and I'd like to continue.
Great, that's better. Yes, I accept. I accept the nomination.
One suggestion,
Please.
and for your determination if she were so elected, considering we have both an interim superintendent who will be new and a search for a new permanent superintendent, I would think it would be very, very helpful from a balance perspective that one of the two roles focuses on each of those two tasks, rather than either one taking both or either one taking neither, because there's a lot involved in both those things. So how that works itself out, I would defer, but that's part of my way of also saying that I think you guys can both do a great job on both those things, those tasks.
I think it's a great point, and I think if the committee votes Dr. Bryson remain vice chair, we can certainly figure that out. Are there any other nominations for vice chair? Hearing none. Roll call. Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Dr. McCaldy?
Yes.
Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Ragsdale?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Dr. Bryson?
Yes.
All right. All right, moving on to the position of secretary. Is there a nomination for the position of secretary?
I nominate Stephen Turner.
I will second that nomination, even though we don't need it. Would you accept the nomination?
Yes, I would.
Mr. Turner, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
Keep you right where you are.
In the corner.
Are there any other nominations for secretary? All right, roll call. Dr. Bryson?
Yes.
Dr. McCaldy?
Yes.
Mr. Golden?
Yes.
Mr. Ragsdale?
Yes.
I'm a yes.
Yes.
Mr. Turner votes for himself. That is unanimous. Leadership has been elected for the next year. Thank you all for your votes, for your support. And we will do subcommittee reorganization in some capacity at our next meeting. So, that concludes old business. Moving us along to other reports, subcommittee reports. Hearing none. Correspondence?
None this evening.
All right. We've got future school committee dates and other notable items, and I'm going to try to go through this quickly, so bear with me. May 15th, the Wilmington Middle School and Wilmington High School course at 7 p.m. in the Wilmington High School auditorium. May 20th, National Honor Society ceremony at 7 p.m. in the Wilmington High School auditorium. May 22nd, the Wilmington High School Honors Jazz Band, 7 p.m. on the Town Common, weather permitting. May 26th, schools and offices are closed for Memorial Day. Also on May 26th is the Wilmington Memorial Day Parade, featuring the Wilmington High School and Elementary District marching bands. May 27th, the North Intermediate and West Intermediate Strings Concert at 6:30 p.m. on the Town Common, weather permitting. May 28th is Athletic Award Nights, 6:30 p.m. in the Wilmington High School Auditorium. May 28th is our next regular school committee meeting at 7 p.m. here in the large group instruction room. May 30th, Class of 2025, Scholarship Night, 6:30 p.m. in the Wilmington High School Auditorium. June 1st, Class of 2025 graduation, 10 a.m. at Alumni Stadium or in the gym if it's
That's right.
raining. June 2nd, Wilmington Middle School and Wilmington High School Band Banquet, 6 p.m. in the Wilmington High School Auditorium and Cafeteria. June 3rd is the Wilmington Middle School and High School Drama Club and a cappella banquet at 6 p.m. in the high school auditorium and cafeteria. Also June 3rd, Wilmington Elementary School Project Community Forum number 7 here in the large group instruction room at 6 p.m. And June 3rd, the Wilmington School School Building Committee meeting, hybrid, 7 p.m. Mr. Golden.
I'd be remiss not to bring this up. Can we go back to subcommittee reports, or is it too late?
Sure, we can go back to subcommittee
So,
reports.
just being on the wellness subcommittee, we did meet yesterday, and we did talk about I'm so tired. I'm so
YRBS.
sorry. Yes, thank you. Oh my God,
Thank you.
acronyms. We did discuss that. It was a productive discussion about kind of incorporating the committee's feedback, incorporating the expertise of the appropriate staff from the health department, and they'll bring that back to us, I think, in an upcoming meeting. So that meeting did happen. So that's my
Did
report
happen.
from
We
that
were both
subcommittee.
there.
We
Yeah.
were both there, so it was very productive. So I just want to make sure that got said.
That's a good reason to revert back to
Yep.
subcommittee reports.
Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Turner, how do we do on the calendar?
I can't believe, but I can't believe that I have no idea that there would be anything more than that. That's such an extensive list. I couldn't possibly add to it, so.
Outstanding.
Thank you.
That being said, and given the late hour, thank you all for your work this evening. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Golden, seconded by Mr. Ragsdale. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Thank you and good night.